Welcome to Holy Kool-Aid Live. Today with me are Steve from the Rationality Rules YouTube channel. I have Rachel Oates from the Rachel Oates YouTube channel. And Skeptic will be joining us shortly. He is having some internet difficulties, but hopefully we'll have Alex back here pretty soon. And so what I wanted to do today, I have a couple of questions for you. We'll be taking some different questions from people in the chat. But we're also going to play a game of Atheist Never Ever Have I Ever. And I'm glad that I didn't push this stream back earlier, because Alex said that he was free from, I think, around 10 a.m. Central Time, my time. But that's way too early to drink. And I wanted to be able to partake in, playing Never Ever Have I Ever. So welcome, guys. Welcome to the chat. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, first and foremost, big congratulations and well done. You absolutely deserve it. So well done.
Thanks.
It is brilliant. Congrats.
Yeah,
and both of you guys have fantastic channels too. I've really been enjoying your content as well, and you've been exploding in the subscriber count.
Yeah, luckily we share like the same audience. So yeah, good stuff. Thank you though.
Yeah, if you guys aren't familiar, I did a collaboration with Steve a couple months back on evolution, and both the what is the evidence for evolution as well as the misconceptions for evolution. I can put a link for that to you guys in the description or something. And Rachel has a channel where you talk about primarily atheism, but don't you also do like fashion on the side as well?
Kind of, yeah. I don't really do that so much on YouTube anymore, but I have my little fashion and beauty blog on the side, and then my channel I talk about atheism and just kind of social issues and a little bit of feminism stuff, and I try and be quite balanced in kind of looking at the radical side of things and the kind of more logical, slightly more rational side of things. So I like to look at both sides of an argument and weigh it up, and yeah. I feel like I'm rambling.
If people can't tell, you're obviously the firebrand atheism, the face of baby eating, satanic hatred, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do eat babies probably every day. So, I mean, sometimes I just get pregnant so I can have an abortion. It's just the kind of person I am.
Yeah. I've tried that, but it doesn't work with my anatomy.
Brilliant.
It looks like Alex has joined us.
Hi, Alex.
Wi-Fi permitting, I'm back. We were having some troubles before. I don't know if you've explained to your viewers, but yeah, we were. My Wi-Fi, we recently got it changed and a new box installed, and it's been playing up to all hell. So I think maybe someone's got it in for me or something. But what can I say?
I've already told them it's because you're British. We've just got bad internet, sir.
Isn't it just? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're able to conquer half the world, but you can't get a decent Wi-Fi connection set up.
Hey, this is what I'm saying. Hyper optic is the future. Since we got it installed, our internet is unbelievable.
Yeah,
I have heard this.
1 week.
I think it was Estonia that has maybe not Estonia. It's somewhere in like Eastern Europe or somewhere where like they have blazing fast internet, and like the whole country has fiber. And the reason for that was because of piracy. They set up these networks where the internet to the outside world was super slow, and so they had like DC++ and all these file sharing networks that they would set up from within apartment blocks. Soviet style apartment blocks, and so you'd have like within the local area network, everyone's sharing files, and you have crazy fast fiber, and then outside of that it was like dial-up speeds. But now their entire internet service, because they have that framework there, is crazy fast. You guys need something like that in the UK.
Something like that, yeah.
I actually don't know what it is. I haven't really looked into it, but I think it's more expensive. I think in America it's relatively cheap to get fiber optic compared to the UK, but I might be talking out of my arse. That might not be the case. we might just be like, no, we're not spending money on it.
So I also just realized
people are cheap.
Yeah, it might be that.
I also just realized that I'm the only person in this hangout who's not from the UK, and that wasn't by design. I was gonna have a YouTuber, Godless Cranium, who I'm doing a collaboration with next Saturday. Great guy, but he got called into work. He wasn't able to make it, and so Rachel was gracious enough to join as the special guest for us. So thank you, Rachel.
No worries. Thank you for asking me. It's really, really good to be here.
So now I'm joined by my former colonial overlords. The colonies have returned.
Yeah, you just wait. You just wait.
Yeah,
We'll get it back. Although to be honest, I don't really know if we'd want you at the moment. Thanks very much.
Our
Thanks,
political
no thanks.
system. Our political system is top notch. I don't know why you wouldn't.
Well, ours isn't amazing either, I must say.
Yeah. We can't really act all superior when we've got Theresa May.
This is true.
No,
Yes.
you know.
No, it's
Although
just that,
I know which I'd prefer.
That's true.
it's not that our system is better or worse. It's just that we Brexited back in '76.
Yeah, no, Thomas, it's not that your system is worse, it's that your people are worse. No offense.
At least our food is better.
Oh, I don't know about that. We have Yorkshire puddings.
Well, but yeah, see, we
This is
take everyone's food and it's like a melting pot, but we take every single culture's food and we make it better. We Americanize it.
No, you just
But
add
you
more
mean
fat and
bigger.
salt.
Yeah, we make it better.
Brilliant.
I'm sure that Gordon Ramsay would be having a field day right now.
Yeah, all of my British friends that go to America, the first thing they say is that small in America is really freaking big.
That's what I found, yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you have a good
Alex
plate
went
of food.
recently. You can tell me first.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Alex, how was your trip in the U.S.?
Oh, it was fantastic. I've always wanted to visit the land of the free. I was very lucky to get over there, but that's one thing that I did notice was the ridiculous sizing of everything. And the free refills kind of caught me off guard a bit when I finished a drink of root beer, which is another thing which I very much enjoyed indulging in over there. They would just come and fill up my glass, and I'd be like, "What are you doing? I'm not going to pay for another glass I didn't ask for." But apparently, it's free everywhere. It's somewhat of a rarity over here.
Mm.
So do you not have that? I'm sure you still have it in like certain fast food chains, don't you?
Sure,
Yeah.
like the Subway
Nando's.
and whatnot.
Nando's has
I'm
really
not-
good free refills.
Like I said, I don't go to Nando's very much, but I'll trust you on that one.
It's like I haven't been in like 2 years now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Not
it's-
really
it's
missing
not
much.
my kind of thing. But America's great. I actually plan one day in the future to become a citizen with luck.
Are you going to move to New York and write for the Atlantic?
Sorry?
Are you going to move to New York and write for the Atlantic?
Yeah, that's right. Something like that. Yeah. Honestly, it's a complete coincidence. I'm not trying to follow in anybody's footsteps, as you might expect.
Nobody's
No,
footsteps.
no, not at all. Not at all. No. Don't be so suggestive.
It's okay. He's one of my idols as well.
Yes, I think there are worse people's footsteps to follow in.
Very true. What about the other two of you? Have you ever been to the U.S. before?
Yeah, I went last year for my sister's wedding actually, which was pretty amazing.
Okay.
That was fun. Like she doesn't live there or anything. Just her and her wife were like, "Hey, we want to get married. We want to go on holiday to America. Let's do it at the same time." It's pretty cool.
Whereabouts was it in the US?
New York.
Yeah, see, I need to go there.
Yeah.
That's next on my list.
It was amazing. Except, like, talking about the portion sizes, we went out for a meal one day. I was like, I'll have like a small glass of wine. It came with a jug for a refill. It was ridiculous. Oh, thank you, beautiful. Get a glass, please. Dan has brought me a bottle of sparkling wine, except now I have to open this without, like, spilling it everywhere.
Not a jug, though, no.
So, no, but I could put it into a jug. It'd be just as good.
Turn it upside down and shake it, and it that's how you open the bottle. It just.
Is that what they do in America?
We're masters of all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Dan says I have two choice of glass.
That's not a choice.
Right.
I can be sensible. I can be sensible sometimes. Not that many people believe it.
What about you, Steve? Have you ever been to the U.S.?
No, I haven't been to the US. I very much plan to. I want to go over and essentially live there for a year, and I want to make it a job, essentially, of going to a load of the most religious places and recording debates. So, yeah, I have big plans with America. I'd certainly like to visit it. And I seem to get on with more Americans than British. So let's see what happens when I go over there.
That's weird because I'm largely the opposite, because I grew up overseas, so I tend to I get along well with Europeans and people from Asia and stuff, but a lot of times when I have chats with people in the States, there's I don't know, it's a very different culture, and even though it's my home, I've found that it's taken me years to kind of integrate with my own culture.
I find them much friendlier over there. Personally, when I visited, and I don't know if this is all just a facade, because I know in England it's kind of the opposite. Everybody acts quite friendly on the exterior, but really wishes the worst for everybody. And if you bump into someone on the tube or something, they'll smile and say, "Oh, terribly sorry," but they'll actually hate you with all of their soul. In America, I wonder if it's the opposite, because everybody's so nice, especially when you're British. You walk over there and everybody's just talking about your accent and how great it is, and oh, you're in the US, it's fantastic, and they're treating you really kindly. And I wonder if they just sort of start. I don't know. I don't know if it's all if it's real or if it's something I should be a bit skeptical of.
It depends on where in the US you are.
Exactly.
Well, California is the only place I've been to, and I imagine that's one of the more friendly states, as it were.
Yeah, it can be, depending on where in California, partially.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, California's about the size of the UK, isn't it?
I've
Which is crazy to think about.
Isn't it? The California is considerably bigger, I thought. I'm not
entirely sure, because I know
you're making me second guess myself, because like whenever you look at it like on a globe, I mean, they distort and skew everything.
I've got a map on my wall right next to me, but they're always distorted, so I can't tell. But especially if you're including Northern Ireland by landmass, I think it might be comparable. Although I don't know actually. I was just doing it by eye. But either way, it's weird to think about how big. Yeah, that's something that's
doing it by eye is the scientific method, so that's good.
I've got a ruler and everything.
When you look at a globe, it's like Greenland is like the size of Africa, but when you actually look at the square footage, or I guess square meterage for you Brits, then it's Africa is like crazy big compared.
You said that with disdain, as though our system is worse than yours, and it's not like you're just falling behind the rest of humanity.
Hey, I've been hoping that the U.S. would shift to the metric system for a long time, but there's actually
they tried it, didn't they?
Well, no, there's been several different steps that have been taken. So like most people still know feet and inches and stuff, but if you look at you go to the store now, they'll actually put on the side of bottles, they'll put, how many milliliters and stuff. And if you are in any kind of scientific setting or any government position, they'll use the metric system. And there's specific steps and changes that have been made legislatively to try to push us towards it, but we haven't given it up entirely.
As far as I know, that the difference is that I think actually Vice put out a video on this very recently, that most countries, when they made the switch, they made it mandatory. So they suddenly switched the system and everybody had to change. But in the US, I think, some reason Nixon is springing to mind, it was around that time perhaps, the US sort of introduced it but didn't make it mandatory. So most people decided, no, we don't want this, and they sort of rejected it, and it never worked because they didn't make it mandatory like the rest of the world. But you're right, it's about time they caught up, because as far as I remember, there was one of NASA's Apollo missions, one of their failed missions or something of the sort. The reason it exploded, the reason it blew up and ended up a failure was because some of the engineers were using the imperial system and some were using the metric system. So their calculations didn't quite align. Something went wrong, and the shuttle blew up. So get your act together.
It does seem like such a strange thing for what is essentially like the biggest country in the world to just do something that's completely the opposite of everyone else.
Isn't that
such is its style?
Isn't that what we do with just about everything, though?
Yeah.
No, you drive on the right, we drive on the left. That's us being
we're the wrong ones there, though. Everyone else does it. Most
of the world drives on the right.
Yeah, exactly. So in that way, we're in the wrong. If you want to do it by the population fallacy.
What I'm still waiting for is for countries to have, universal plugs, where the wall sockets are all exactly the same. Instead, that's something that it doesn't matter what country you go to. Every single country has like a different type of plug, and it's nuts.
Yeah.
Yes. There's two things America needs: universal plugs and universal healthcare.
Yeah, the point.
All right, so I was thinking we could play a round of Never Ever Have I Ever, but atheist style. So the questions can be like, never ever have I ever peed in the baptismal, or have I don't know, worked in a religious position, you know, I don't know. So who wants to go first?
Or are we cracking out the whiskey? Is this how things are going, or is this?
Alright.
Yeah.
I had to put ice in it because my drink was hot and it wasn't in the fridge, but I have like a little bit of Fireball too, so.
Yes.
I've got the girliest drink ever because I have the girliest hair ever, and that is Serrano and Coke. So Diet Coke, don't worry.
How lovely.
That's not the girliest. It could have little flowers and fruit sticks in it.
I remember when I was younger and a load of people were saying to me, "Oh, that's a sissy drink. Why are you drinking that?" My response was because I enjoy it. Done. I don't mind going first, but can you explain the rules to me again? This is how long it's been since I've partied.
Okay, so for anyone wondering how it works is we kind of go around in a circle, or since we don't have a circle, we'll just go, I guess, in my live chat, it looks like Alex is on the left, and then Rachel, and then Steve, and then me. So we can start with Alex, and he'll basically say, never ever have I ever done whatever, insert religious thing here. Never ever have I ever, meditated on top of a mountain or something. And whichever ones of us have, you can either do it like have or hasn't done it, but I think it's whoever has done it normally takes a drink.
Yeah, that's what I normally do.
Okay.
So.
All right.
And we don't have to do till last man standing. We can just man or woman.
We
All
just play until like whoever's watching gets bored.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, like I got this vision of the stream just like continuing for several hours, and we're all just pretty much asleep. Oh, that'd be as entertaining as a church sermon.
You're like, never have I ever. All right, so do you want to go first, Alex? And well, after we'll go through like 4 of us, and then we'll answer like a question or two from the live chat. So if you guys have questions, I'll keep an eye on them, shoot them down in the.
Yeah, I've forgotten about the live chat. I'd completely forgotten that was in existence.
Yeah, so you can see it right there. I sent you guys a link in the group chat.
Awesome.
You just might want to mute it, or else you'll hear like both that and this coming with a delay.
Right.
We
Yeah.
don't want...
But there's also.
Hey, is TJ Kirk here? Or is that
that's not the real one.
I didn't think so.
You can click on next to the profile, and you can go and check out the channel of the people chatting.
Yeah.
So I think there's a fake Logic and there's a fake TJ Kirk that both have like 0 subs. But Apologia is here. He has a really cool YouTube channel. He's also an atheist YouTuber. We have, who else do we have in the chat? We have a lot of people, a lot of really cool people.
I was going to say, not that we're bad influencers, but if anyone in the chat wants to drink with us and play along, I encourage them to do it.
Yeah.
You could tether yourself to someone. You could say every time that Holy Koolaid drinks, I have to drink.
Oh.
Yeah, nominate a person.
It looks like genetically modified Skeptic is also, he's also in the chat.
Oh,
He's
sweet. Yeah, I've just seen
YouTuber.
Hello.
And yeah, so we got Undoomed. I'm just looking at the YouTubers and stuff that I recognize or people that I know. But yeah, it seems like we got an awesome crowd. I'm really happy to have everyone here watching, and drink responsibly if you're joining in. Let's get this started. We'll pass it on over to Alex.
Sure. Okay, well, I'll begin with something that happened recently. Never have I ever been accused of being paid by NASA and or the American government.
Oh.
Yeah, so I have. Does that mean I drink?
Wait, Alex, you can't say it if it has happened to you.
I can't say if it has.
Twice as much.
Yeah, it has to be something that you actually haven't done.
Well, I've never understood the point of a drinking game that doesn't actually end up in you drinking. So I tell you what, I'll take a shot for that one and call it experience.
Okay.
The rule we played by was if you said something that you'd done, you had to have 2 drinks.
Oh, okay,
So-
that's absolutely fine by me.
Not that I'm a bad influence, but
What if you like, what if you decide on your turn to switch it up and be like, I have done this, and then like people who've never done it have to drink?
Oh, okay. This is confusing the hell out of me, but let's do it.
Inventive.
Well, let's do a couple rounds of the normal way, and then if we want to switch it up, we can. All right. So, Alex, what have you actually never done, or should we all drink if we've been accused by NASA?
No. Well, I'm interested to know who has.
Yeah, Alex, did you get it from the Flat Earth? Because I have had so many Flat Earthers calling me they've called me the worst names I've ever been called on the internet.
Yeah.
But I've been called a shrill, and I'm paid by NASA. Is that where you got it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, I think, like, for all of the things I talk about, the most controversial topics you can think of, the most hate I've ever received on YouTube were two things. And firstly, that's saying that the Earth is probably a globe, and secondly, saying that I preferred the third episode of Star Wars to the seventh. Those are the worst. Those were the worst out of the lot by far.
Wow.
But yeah, no, I've been accused every now and again. I have tweeted NASA a few times saying, "My God, you didn't tell me what to do if they figured it out."
Just wait until you make a video about 9/11 truthers. You'll get
gosh.
way more hate.
Yeah, don't even get me started.
Or about feminism or the transsexual, like anything about that, social justice warriors. You'll get.
Yeah, you get pulverized, I think.
Strangely, my like gay rights ones have had the most hate from just like the most disgusting homophobes.
Really?
Like, yeah. Like, I did not expect it, but so many people are like, oh, you're just saying this because whatever, and then like saying loads of random stuff about how, to put it politely, apparently I just want it in the bum, and that is the only reason I support gay rights. I'm like, you do realize I'm a straight woman with a boyfriend. Yeah, no, it's very, very strange.
That's the internet for you.
I'll never understand some people, but I've always been curious how many, like, what % of flat earthers are actually believing it, and
yes,
what % are just trolls.
The problem is it's impossible to distinguish, because the genuine flat earthers are so beyond any sort of recognition of rationality and logic most of the time.
But so are trolls.
Exactly. So it's impossible to tell the difference. So you have to be really careful. And this is actually, I don't know if you guys have found this, but like videos when I respond to videos, or I'll get sent a video and I have to take a moment and really consider, is this genuine, or am I being trolled? I don't want to put out a response video only to find that they were just, they were just trolling me and making me look really silly. So it's very difficult at times to tell the difference. But flat earthers are definitely the worst by a long shot.
I typically, with those types of videos, I go back and I watch previous videos that creator has done to get a feel for, do they actually believe this stuff? Are they?
But you do get some dedicated trolls out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But here's something that I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's quite an interesting point, and that is, we look at the flat Earth conspiracy, like these people. It's such a mental conspiracy that these people have to be disingenuous. But if you compare the belief and what you need to believe to think that the Earth is flat, and
I see where you're going.
the evidence is fake. Am I breaking up? Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you fine. I was just saying, I can see where you're going. Fine point.
Yeah. If you compare exactly how mental that is compared to, just say, Christianity, outside of the bubble of it being part of your culture, it's far more likely, it's far easier to believe that conspiracy than, say, Christianity. So I do buy that most of them probably do believe it. And when I have actually had conversations with them, it's the same problem I have with a lot of people. It's the same problem that conspiracy theorists have, and the worst creationists, to use a bad term, but they just do not understand science in the slightest. They don't understand that personal experience isn't fact. It's bizarre. That mixed with enough weed to induce some paranoia, and there you go.
Well,
anyway, I'm going to get more hate.
I would say for the flat earthers that at least they attempt to actually introduce some kind of empirical, observable evidence. Like I can imagine if somehow we had access to a person whose memory was wiped of everything they knew, but could sort of comprehend rationality and logic, and we sort of tried to convince them firstly of Christianity and secondly of the earth being flat, and we showed them all the evidence that we could muster in its favor, I think they'd be more inclined to believe that the earth is flat, because all that you can sort of bring to the table in terms of something like Christianity is to say, well, look, there's this book. I mean, sure, you can give the arguments for God's existence, but specifically Christianity, there really isn't much going for it. But with the flat earth, at least you could.
As well, you know, like you're completely right. They also just go, here's Christianity, and then the arguments they present is for deism.
Well,
exactly,
have you guys seen Vsauce did a video on flat Earth and why people believe that? And the thing is, you know, when you have an object, you know, like a massive disk, assuming that gravity still works the way that it does and that it's not just rising through space super quickly and, you know, acceleration is indistinguishable from gravity, everything would be pulled to the center of mass. And so as you start going, you know, further and further towards the edge, it would be like walking up a super steep slope. You would be pulled back towards the center. The problem is when you have an object as massive as the Earth is, anything that gets over a certain size automatically, like it cannot overcome its own gravity, and it would crunch into a ball. And that's pretty much what you have with the Earth. Is it's an extremely smooth sphere. You know, the lumps on the Earth are like it's something similar to like a billiard ball as to how smooth it is when you compare the actual size of the Earth with the size of like the tallest mountain and the deepest trench.
Because he did the thing about how the Earth is actually flatter than a pancake. He showed that, didn't he? That was really good.
It actually is flatter than a pancake.
Yes, yeah.
So,
you know, I mean, they don't believe in gravity at all. I sort of entertained the idea that maybe it was some kind of acceleration. If that were the case, if you consider the age of the Earth, even if you only consider it to be a few thousand years old, and the speed of expansion being 9.81 meters per second squared, at this point in time, it would be expanding so fast as to surpass the speed of light, which is absolutely absurd. So I found that the only sort of possible defense is the idea that gravity doesn't exist at all, and it's all to do with density and sort of sinking in the atmosphere and whatnot. It's absolutely bizarre. But this is the characteristic of the sort of flat earthers, is that all of their arguments are very post hoc. They're not going to have one big sort of image that they can put forward and say, here's my evidence, here's my proof. They sort of take you point by point. You say, what about gravity? They say, oh, this explanation. You say, what about, you know, eclipses? And they say, oh yeah, this explanation. And there's no sort of solid viewpoint that they can put forward.
Yeah. Well, and theories like, you know, Newtonian gravity and general and special relativity and stuff like that, they explain so much. And then for someone to just come along and be like, oh, well, you know, it's the Earth is like a disk because, you know, it operates like this. And they come up with some explanation that they just pull out of thin air. It might answer one thing, but what they don't realize about these theories is that these theories are so all-encompassing that they explain every single thing out of like thousands of different areas of science that, you know, require explanations. So it's,
On the topic of theories, I was debating with somebody actually at their church 2 nights ago. It went on till 3 a.m., so that was fun. It was that science, it always changes its mind. So you had the theory of Einstein, Newton's theory of gravity, essentially, although they called it a law back then. And then all of a sudden, all of it made no sense because Einstein came along. And I was like, no, that's not what happened. Like, it still works. It's perfectly fine. Newton is fine. It was never able to solve celestial problems. That's where Einstein comes in, and it works on. But you can tell that just there's no understanding whatsoever. This person's 65. Like, I don't know if I can help this person.
That's absolutely one of my pet hates. This idea of science always changing its mind, and science once thinking things are wrong. This is actually one. Oh no. Sorry, I was about to say something that would make me sound like an absolute prick.
Do it.
Go for it.
I was going to say this is actually one of the things I asked Lawrence Krauss, as it happens. I put to him this idea. You know, what about people who say that science has been wrong? Science thought the Earth was flat. But as you say, it still works. It's not like science gets proven wrong; it just gets refined. And people who say things like, you know, science used to think the Earth was flat, it's not the case. It's just that it hadn't been sort of looked into. It may have been the case that long ago enough, I mean, people often cite like the ancient Greeks, but they knew that the Earth was round. But there may have been a time when the greatest minds on Earth did actually think that the Earth was flat. But that wouldn't be because they'd researched it, they tested it, and they concluded it was flat. That would be just because they assumed it was flat, and they were doing other things with their time. They were doing other sciences. And it's only when somebody actually bothered to look into it that they realized that it was round. So it's not like the sort of flat Earth belief that people may or may not used to have held came from sort of a application of the scientific process. It was just the background.
Yeah, it's like just because people once thought that the Earth was flat doesn't mean that it was scientifically tested. And even if they did with their rudimentary instruments, the instruments that we have now are better. So science isn't discarding everything and completely changing its mind on stuff. It's improving. The reason that it's changing is because it's getting better and better and better, and we're getting closer and closer and closer to the truth. And I think that's one of its strengths.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you guys.
Okay.
You sure? Yeah, sorry. I know about you guys, but I'd much rather trust something that altered and updated when presented with new evidence than someone who just stands there and says, no, 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 I'm going to stick to my beliefs no matter what you show me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difference between religion and science, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Religion starts with an answer and makes evidence fit, and science starts with the evidence and sees where it fits.
Exactly, yeah.
I also wish... Oh, sorry, no, go ahead. I was interrupting again.
Yeah, if we were in person, it's easy. You can see, they're about to speak.
Exactly, yeah.
I can't see, so I'm just going to go for it. And it's slightly laggy, so do forgive me if I interrupt, but fuck you. No.
Not to change the topic, but Alex, do you still have that? You had a block of wood that said 10,000 subscribers, and then you like tacked a 0 on it.
Hang on, let me. I'm gonna attempt to turn on my video just in case. I mean,
Alex,
if it starts going funny, just let me know. Let me see if you can. Let me see if this works. Hello, can you see me? Okay.
Oh God,
yeah,
turn it off.
Yeah.
Please ignore these horrendous headphones. I do have better headphones that look a bit better on my head, but
are those Beats?
They're not Beats. No, I can tell you that. I lost the cable, so these are actually.
I'll withhold judgment for now.
I'm kindly borrowing these from my mother, who very kindly lent them to me. But anyway, yes, I do.
Your mom wears headphones.
I do still have that plaque. The thing is though, I never got sent the silver one yet. It's still sort of processing, so I made a bit of a modification, but it still exists. This is
So see, I wanted to be cool too, so I tore off a piece of cardboard from a pizza box, and since your 0 is in the wrong place, or not your 0, your comma's in the wrong place, then I've gone ahead and I've drawn 3,000, and I've taken a little piece of paper with a 0, and I'm gonna tape that right there. So now I have 30,000. I'll put
fantastic, and congratulations too, because I just realized I hadn't said anything, but that's absolutely fantastic. Congrats on that. I think that looks fantastic.
Definitely need to drink that.
Yeah.
Koolaid reaching 30,000 subscriburs, and to everyone watching and everyone that's supported him, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Literally everyone who's been sharing it and stuff. It helps me a lot to be able to spread this message and promote skepticism and critical thinking. And it's sad. I was reading Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan, and he was talking about the scientific literacy rates in the U.S. And even though we think, we have a great literacy rate, 99.9% of Americans can read and write, we have something like a 1% science literacy rate where people actually understand science and how it works. And I don't know if it's any better now than when he wrote that, but that seems low to me. But it's insane what percentage of people I talk to, even with like master's degrees and stuff, who have absolutely no idea how the scientific method works, who have no idea how peer review works, or what a reliable scientific journal is.
Yeah, I think one of the most common misapprehensions that people have, in fact, is they think about science in the wrong way altogether. They think of it as an ends rather than a means. They think that science is like some kind of doctrine, or science is some kind of ideology. Of course, you get that too, but it's not even like a thing. It's a method that you use.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was going to say method is in the name.
Exactly, yes. So people, if you're thinking like in terms of there are certain things that are outside of science that can be proved through other means. Well, no, that's not the case, because as soon as you can prove them, they become science. If something is testable, if something is falsifiable, I think is probably the key characteristic. It can be scientifically tested and can become science if proven to be true, or at least not proven to be false after rigorous testing. But people think of it as like this final form. It's like we've got our sort of science, here it is, take it or leave it. No, it's an ever-evolving process. It's similar to how people think that human beings are the end of evolution. No, it's a continuous process. It's not like we have this doctrine that we can hand to you on a plate and say, here's our beliefs. It's like, this is our understanding of the world so far. All of it works. We could do with a bit more refining. We could do with sort of sorting out the details. But as a general rule of thumb, yeah, we have a good picture of the universe. But that's not science. That's thanks to science. That's not science in itself. That's because of science that we have this understanding. I think that's probably the main mistake people make when considering what science is, and especially those who try to dismiss it.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys will agree, and I'm sure you will. I don't know if it's the case in America either, but particularly in Britain, or at least when I was at school, science is taught as facts. It's taught as knowledge. There's very little, this is how we came to this answer. That's the problem. It's the education system. It's not teaching people how the scientific method arrived at a certain conclusion or how it's got a certain theory. Instead, you just turn up and they go, right, fill in this bit of paper. You got to tell us about photosynthesis, give us the right answers, regurgitate the right answers. That's not how you do it. You need to teach them how the method works and how to use the method themselves. I think doing that will immediately, in any culture, reduce scientific illiteracy and indeed religiosity within a single generation.
It's like that old maxim of teaching people how to think, not what to think.
Yeah, definitely.
I was going to say, I definitely found that at school up until about GCSE, and it was all the same then. And then when I did my A-levels, we did a really different biology course. It was like, it wasn't EdXL, but it was like some subset of EdXL, and it was like completely new. We were like the second year ever to do it, I think. And the whole basis of it was like biology in practice. So we did all the usual modules, like we did like a plants module, and we did like a brain module, and we did so on and so on. But it was all about understanding the methods of how people came to the conclusions and how it's used today. So like how it's used in medicine, or how it's used to produce more food, or so on. And that really changed how I saw biology, and it was completely different from how we did it at GCSE. It was just because we learned it in such a different way. And like it wasn't the best course because it wasn't like perfected yet, but it was a really different teaching method, and that's what made me want to go on and do it at university. But then when I got back to university, again, when I was doing biomed, it was all about just memorizing facts, and I didn't want to do that, which is why I changed course.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that's good. Yeah, that represents it greatly. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, except one module we did, which was taught by my personal tutor at uni, where we literally, it was about like bacteria and stuff, and to learn how to identify all the bacteria, he basically gave us like 8 or 10 different samples and said, okay, now you understand all the methodology for finding different bits, go and identify what these are. And we had to do all these crazy tests and stuff without any like indication of what the samples were. And it was like the fun side of science. It was discovering it for yourself, and I absolutely loved that. It was fantastic.
I wish that more people were able to have that kind of experience and do hands-on, experiments. And, rather than just thinking, oh, it's a chemistry class, you pour these 2 chemicals together, you get a volcano. It's like, no, there's a lot more to science than that. But shall we do not round 2, but Rachel's turn?
Yeah, sure. Ooh,
wait, before you do, I only have water on me. I might go and fix that as you can.
Yeah, we can wait.
I'll be 1 moment.
All right. Well, Rachel, if you want to, while he's gone, you can do 2 rounds.
Ooh, okay.
2 questions.
No pressure.
Put me on the spot here. Okay, never have I ever been accused of being a Satanist.
Yeah, so I have.
That's yet to happen to me. I'm so happy.
I took a selfie with Lucian Greaves, the head of the Satanic Temple, and I got the accusations pouring in from that. But I support a lot of what the Satanic Temple is doing, and the rights that they're fighting for and stuff, because they're not actually spiritual. They don't believe in you know, a physical, actual Satan or God. So,
or someone could just take the last sentence you said and not add the context, and just keep that. You know, I actually believe in. You know, I really appreciate what the Satan is just doing. This is great stuff. Yeah.
yeah, thanks for putting ideas in people's head. It's not like we're already on the internet filled with trolls.
I'm really scared
I'll do it
they're
for
going to do that with me when I'm sarcastic.
Or you'll just take out the part where Rachel said, "Never ever have I ever," and she'll be like, you know, people have called me a Satanist, or accused me of being a Satanist. Like, you know, yeah, I'm a.
Or worse, I'll take that bit earlier when I was like, yeah, I get pregnant just to have abortions.
I eat babies all the time. People accuse me of being a Satanist.
Brilliant.
I could just
I'll
clip together the best bits of this interview and just make a promo for it. You missed it, Alex.
I feel I missed something.
Rachel is a Satanist, and she eats babies, and she sacrifices.
We knew that already.
Well, but you know,
listen.
she worships Beelzebub.
Oh, are you looking at a comment? Is that the?
No, we did one round without you, but Rachel's gonna go again because you missed it.
Oh, okay.
Right, sure thing. Yeah, I solved my problem. I've got my again, not trying to imitate anybody's favorite drink, but I'm on the Johnny Walker.
No, but you're doing Red Label. You can't do red.
I know, but you know, we live within our means.
My go-to is black, but I just drink less so that I can drink better.
Right. Yes.
All
right, Rachel.
Be at uni soon, Alex.
Sorry.
Are you going to be at uni soon?
Soon, yes. I'm actually currently working on my personal statement as it happens.
Oh, nice one. Well, I was going to say, because once you're a student, you'll just drink anything you can afford.
You know what the best beer in the world is? Free beer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, didn't see that one coming. Well, in fairness, though, I can give you another Christopher Hitchens quote. He did once say that cheap booze is a false economy, which I think is a fair point. Because you probably do end up spending more overall on the cheap stuff to get that satisfaction. But anyway, don't let me digress from the proceedings.
Oh god, I was going to come up with one. Okay, so we had the Satanist one. Oh, one that I know we can all drink for. Never have I ever eaten a child.
Damn it, that's what I was going to go for.
Yeah.
Wait, but you have done it, Rachel, so you have to drink twice.
Damn it. You guys are going to get me drunk.
All right,
I'm
Steve.
not next. God damn it. I don't actually mean God damn it. I don't believe in God. I just said the cultural thing. Get over it. No,
Yeah, I always feel like people
Never have I
judge me.
ever.
I'm like, oh my god. They're going to be like, can you really say that?
Yeah, I had someone say to me, you just said Jesus. And I went, yep. They went, see? I went, the fuck does that what does that mean? You caught me, damn it.
Old habits die hard, don't they?
They do. And also, I'm a fan of, some people say, no, words are words. They do not change. Sorry, that's just not how they work. Words do change, even though some of them I really wish they wouldn't. But that is the way it is.
It's like,
so,
if I sneeze and somebody says bless you, I don't say what papal authority do you have to bless me? Who are you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. In my head, I drop kick them, but the British in me doesn't do that. I go, oh, well, thank you very much.
I just
and then when
reply
they sneeze, they don't say it back, and they look at me, and I feel compelled to say it. So
I just reply with "May the noodles be with you."
I'll take it. Yeah, why not? Go for that.
As
Right.
a pastafarian.
Oh, I get that.
Okay. Despite going to
Sorry.
a school,
It took me a minute. I'm quite slow sometimes.
It has nothing to do with drinking.
Yeah, I was
alcohol.
going to say nothing to do with that at all.
yeah, you can't blame it on 2 sips.
All right, Steve.
Okay, here's one that I think I'll get you all on. Despite going to a Catholic school and the Christian upbringing, I have never believed in the Christian God.
Wait, Rachel never has.
No.
Well, that's you two. So what? You never at all believed in a Christian God?
No.
What about
so
God?
I went to a Church of England school, and we were like taught it every week. So we had these like religion classes where we got taught Bible studies and Bible stories, and we had this vicar come in every week and like preach to us or whatever. But yeah, no, it just never really felt right, and I never really believed there was anything there. And then when I was about 7 years old, my sister, who was like, she must have been like 22 at the time, I think. She's quite a bit older than me. And we were just like playing around one day, and she's like, oh, so if you believe in God then? I was like, no, I don't think I do, because it just didn't fit for me. So, yeah.
I did have a blip when I was a child. I used to be quite prone to anger, and somebody really annoyed me one day. So I walked into the classroom after him, and I flipped over a table, and then I walked outside and sat on the grass, pulling up the grass, saying, "I don't believe in you anymore, God." So there was I had somewhat of a tumultuous faith when I was young, but it promptly came back, so it was all good. He made it up to me.
So that's why everyone says, as an atheist, why do you hate God? It's because of your.
Yes, absolutely. It's because of that kid in year 6.
What's your answer to people that say, "Why do you hate God?" Or why do you fight against religion?
Well, why does somebody hate God is a nonsense question if they're an atheist. It doesn't make any sense. I don't hate God. I hate religion. Well, most religions anyway. As for why, I think everybody has a slightly different answer to this, which is always very interesting. Mine, I think, is people say, like, I get why you would sort of want people not to force their religious beliefs on you, and people don't have a problem when I'm talking about secularism. Is when I'm talking about the philosophy of the existence of God, that people say, what's the point? Why do you have to convince these people that he doesn't exist? And the reason for me is that, look, if you are a believer, you pretty much have no choice in most cases but to share in some way or another your beliefs, whether it be through the influence of voting, for instance. There's a complete difference between separation of church and state and just using your religious beliefs to vote, which is perfectly fine. The problem is, of course, if people are sort of deluded in their beliefs or some of the beliefs they hold, if they're using those beliefs to then vote for politicians, that does affect me. Also, for the people who do actually just force their beliefs on other people or try to do so anyway, you can talk all you like about secularism. You can talk all you like about how the church is influencing politics, it's influencing education, and they'll say, good. This is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that because it's God. He can do what he likes. But the only way that you're going to possibly convince these people to stop using God to influence their policies is by convincing them that this God maybe doesn't exist. You're not going to be able to do it any other way. And so, like, don't get me wrong, I understand why it might be seen as a bad thing. I remember when I first moved into where I live now, when I was still religious. It was quite a long time ago. We went to the local church for the first time, and it was near Easter. So we sat down in the pews, and this very, very old, very frail lady turned to me, and she just out of the blue just said, I wish you and your family a very, very Merry Easter. And it was absolutely lovely. That woman seemed so nice. Now, I have to be honest with myself. If I'm out there sort of bashing on God, if my ultimate goal was achieved, that lady would be giving up her faith in God. And I hate that. I hate that because obviously she's not doing anybody any harm. But then you have to sort of weigh up the pros and cons. Sure, it's unfortunate that people that I know and some people who I love will sort of have this negative effect if you sort of destroy their faith.
But that lady, she's a sweet lady in herself. Like, she's not going to suddenly, if she stops believing in God, be like, I hope that you die in a torture pit.
But that's even worse, though, because she's going to be just sad. She's going to be upset. She's going to possibly lose hope. And that does upset me. But is it worth it? If you look at the negative,
a fear of hell.
Exactly. Look at the negative influence that religion has in the world. Look at the positives and weigh them up. It's intellectually dishonest to ignore that religion does, for some people, have positive influences in their life if they interpret it in a certain way. Usually, the further away they get from scripture, the more peaceful they are. But some people do credit religion as being a force for good in their world, which may be true in some cases. But
I'm actually addressing that on Saturday. I have a video I'm putting out on religious charity. And, there's so many times when I get this where people say, well, but what about all the good that religion does? Isn't it a force for good in the world, all the charity that's been given and stuff? And my response in the video is, do I have to lie to every cold person before I give them a blanket? Why do I have to couple something good and something amazing and something wonderful with lies and horrific things? Hamas does, gives to charity. ISIS gives to charity. Does that justify the existence of these horrific organizations? And
also it says nothing about the existence of the God in whom they believe. It may be very true that one of the tenets, one of the 5 pillars of Islam is charity. You have to give charity if you can afford it as a Muslim. That says nothing about the morality of the rest of the scripture, and it also says absolutely nothing about whether the God exists. And this is one of the things that often gets so conflated, is you'll be arguing, and it comes from both sides, atheists and believers. Somebody might put forward, for instance, a believer might say, I believe in God because of the Kalam cosmological argument. But then an atheist might say, like, yes, but if this God did exist, then he'd be this horrendous dictator, this evil, but it doesn't matter. That's got nothing to do with whether he or not he exists. People mix up the political argument about whether God is a good influence or a bad influence and whether or not he actually exists. And that frustrates me to no end. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, it just represents the flawed reasoning. I just wanted to quickly go back to what you were saying about the old lady. She's comfortable. I do agree that if you was to make it so that she doesn't have the religion anymore, she may be sad, but that's only because somebody's told her she's won the lottery when she hasn't. If she was brought up in a culture where, rather than shoving absolute nonsense down her throat, they really recognize what it is to be a human, and they taught them that, look, you live once, but this is how you can flourish, and this is how you can XYZ, then not only is it not a lie, people can be happy and it's real, and they're not claiming jurisdiction over the experience of other people based on faith or based on some cultural aspect. When I'm asked why do I fight against religion, and it's normally by people they are that type, they're really nice, they're normally, where I am, they're normally a Christian and they're not anti-gay. Most of them are against abortion, etc. But they're nice people, they're good people. And I think it's Hitchens, but my answer just tends to be, religion makes otherwise decent and intelligent people say and do atrocious things. And if you just talk with them long enough, you'll find examples of where it's poisoned them.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Yeah. I hadn't really thought about it that way before, but you're right. If you can sort of nip it in the bud in the first instance, there's no need for disappointing old ladies in churches, which isn't something I enjoy doing with my time.
That was a fantastic analogy too, by the way, with the lottery.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I have to kind of ask, if, at whatever point, I imagine, call it 80 or something, at that point, if you tell her that God isn't real, why exactly would she be sad? Would it be because she feels like she's missed out on certain things in her life, or would it be because she feels like she's missing out on things that could have been in a
I think personally, I think what it is especially elderly people. I know it's the case in Britain. I don't know about the rest of the world, but there tends to be a case of loneliness and isolation for the elderly for multiple reasons, especially women who outlive their husbands oftentimes. And if their children are often being very busy, they get very lonely. And so one of the ways that they can find a sense of purpose and fill their time is through religion. And also, of course, if you're older and you've sort of got to start thinking about the possibility of dying within the next sort of few decades at the very least, that's a very scary prospect, and a lot of people comfort themselves through religion. Now, Steve, you're right in saying that if these people had been taught differently from the outset, we wouldn't have this problem, which is fine and works for today's generations. But for these people who already exist, there's nothing that we can do about that now. No. And so there is going to be this one sort of generation of just, there's not really much that we can do for it, but we have to weigh up the benefits for future generations with the discomforts of today's generations. But I think there's multiple reasons why somebody might be upset. But I think the main thing is, if you've been taught something for your entire life that you believe to be truth and sacrosanct, in fact, to have that torn away from you, especially when you're nearing the end of your life, I mean, you must have an incredible sense of waste from it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that although it's not true and there's no reason for it, in her mind, she's probably going to heaven. She's been given this capacity to live on forever, to see her family members, normally to see her dog, etc., etc. This is the mentality they've been sold, and this is what they believe. So to go in there and to be able to demonstrate to them, if you are able to demonstrate to them that it's not real, they feel a real loss. The fact that there isn't a loss is almost irrelevant in this aspect because the psychological damage is done. They really feel like they've lost something. That's the unfortunate part. One of the answers to it, at least I think, is that generation by generation, people need to get more and more towards this, to secularism, where there is situations where there are lessons being taught about how to live as a human and what it means to be a human. Real philosophy, not philosophy that's been hijacked by theology. But one thing that absolutely is worth drinking to, and is part of the topic that I'm creating a video on next, is I looked up in America what the difference is in generations, particularly with Christianity, on whether or not they accept evolution, whether or not they've got these religious, they still hold to these religious assertions. And it's going down and down per generation. And once you get under 30, most Americans accept evolution.
Yes.
Now, we're always, and rightfully, we're always saying that that America is particularly behind, you know, when it comes to the first world, when it comes to science. But we really should stop and just celebrate that this is Hitchens, Dawkins, Harris, the impact that we're now starting to contribute to. It is working, and that's amazing.
Have you noticed too that the activists and, you know, people who are speaking up, the demographic is shifting too, as far as who the activists are? You know, first you had the Four Horsemen, and they were all, you know, a bunch of older guys. Then you had, you know, this shift where you had kind of this YouTube atheism in like 2009 to 2012 or so, where, you know, you had people like, you know, Thunderfoot and Aaron Ra and others that were, you know, a little bit younger. And now you have the millennials are starting to speak up. And it's showing the younger generation that this is our movement. This is, you know, we are, you know, taking ownership of it in a way. On what you were saying a second ago, as far as, you know, why people cling to these beliefs when they're old, you know, in psychology, there's a term that Steve kind of touched on, but it's called loss aversion. And it's where, if let's say that I've done all these things, I've given all this money and stuff, like, even rather than thinking of it as a sunk cost and I've just lost that, and there's future things that I could lose or I could save, I think of it in terms of, well, I don't want all of that to be for nothing. And so you throw away the rest of your life and the rest of your potential. And
yeah, totally.
So if we're thinking of, you know, the older generation, they've spent their whole life dedicated to a religion. They don't want it to all be for nothing. But Rachel, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this.
Wait, on the old people thing, or on the, like, generation?
Oh, we haven't given you a chance to chime in.
Oh, that's okay. I think it's important to note that while there are now younger generations of atheists like us guys, there's also younger generations of religious people using platforms like YouTube for exactly the same thing we are, but just with their agenda. So a lot of people who I've been watching recently there's a lot of young Christian married couples talking about traditional values and how to be godly women and things like this. And
hashtag trad life.
Yeah. And I kind of feel like it can be difficult, because if, like, there's a kid today who's exposed to one side or the other, they're going to grow up feeling like they don't really have much of a choice. And I think it's important for our generation to make sure that people understand both sides of the argument and not just see our side or not just see their side. Like, my nephew is 3 years old, and my brother and sister-in-law, his parents, are very religious. They go to church every Sunday. They're very active in their church community. But at the same time, his mum always lets him sit and watch my videos. Like, from this early age, they're kind of opening him up to both sides. And I think that's kind of a really important thing, to make sure that people are getting the facts from both sides and then making up their own mind. Because just, you know, indoctrinating someone to believe in atheism isn't any more useful than indoctrinating someone into Christianity. Ultimately, they're going to make up their own mind eventually when they're old enough to.
It's the weakest kind of atheism.
Sorry?
It's the weakest kind of atheism. You're not teaching them how to think critically or how to use scientific skepticism.
Exactly, yeah. I think if we make sure we open them up to the other side's arguments and say, this is what they argue, but here's some kind of, like, way that you can think for yourself and make up your own mind, I think that's what's going to help people the most, really. That makes
That's
sense?
the most important. Yeah. No, I agree. In fact, people ask me what my goal is with the YouTube channel. they sort of expect me to say I want to convince people of my atheistic philosophy. That's not exactly the case. All I want is for there to be a situation where whatever you believe, you can back it up. I don't care if you are a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew. If you can give me some good rational arguments in favor of that position, I have all the respect in the world for you. Fine. I may not respect your beliefs, but I respect you, and I respect that you've actually implied some form of critical thinking. Problem is that all these rational arguments that I've seen just aren't convincing to me. And like Steve mentioned earlier, the vast majority of times you'll find if somebody's arguing in favor of an interventionary God or a specific God, all they're arguing for is deism. That's all they do. But yeah, no, you're right in saying that we can't just sort of dogmatically instill atheism into people, because then we've become the very things that we've sort of set out to destroy, if you will. So I think for me, it's more about secularism than it is about atheism. Although, of course, I am going to put up my arguments for atheism, and more arguments against religion, I should say. But yeah, to sort of instill it without letting people see the other side is just as irresponsible as doing the same, but vice versa.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, I completely agree. And I feel like, what was I going to say? Yeah, I feel like when people ask me what I want to do with my channel, like mostly I just want to make sure that people are doing whatever they can to kind of like be good people, and that's what I want to talk about. So when I see people using religion as an excuse to hate on other people or to try and oppress other people, like when people turn around and say that my 2-year relationship with Dan is somehow more legitimate than my sister's 15-year relationship with her wife, and they're oppressing her for whatever reason, that's the kind of thing I want to talk about. When I see people saying that you can only do good if you believe in this religion or this religion or this religion, that's the kind of thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about encouraging people to do good things for the sake of doing good, not because they think they're going to get a reward out of it. So I don't necessarily have anything against religion, because I feel like religion can be amazing. It can give people these amazing feelings of comfort and happiness, but it's when someone's religious beliefs start affecting other people that I want to kind of speak out about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't see that as religion that's providing that. I see that as a type of collective effervescence that you can get elsewhere. They oftentimes couple it with religion, and they blurry and muddy the waters. But you're talking about, charitable, like humanistic altruism. You're talking about, collective effervescence, and that's not what religion is. Like, religion is when you take that and you couple it with dogma, and I'm trying to decouple it, and I think all of us are.
Yeah,
it's like you
that does make a lot of sense.
And the dancing, etc., and the hymns and the community. Just don't tell people who to sleep with and in what position.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you guys still have drinks?
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Damn right.
If you're in the live chat, ask some questions. We'll get to a couple of them. But for right now, never ever have what?
I want to know who they're teamed with. They have to drink if you mess up.
Never ever have I ever been in or sat in or confessed in a Catholic confessional.
I'm not getting drunk tonight.
Really? Just Alex?
I'm the only one who's been to confession.
Wow.
Gosh, man.
I went to a Church of England school, so we didn't have anything like that.
I just never sinned.
Confessionals were very fun, because we used to do them at school. We used to have reconciliation services, and they'd turn the hall, they'd turn all the lights down, put a bunch of candles in the room, and set up some dividers with like 5 or 6 different priests from all different churches around, and we'd literally line up in school, and we'd go and practically be forced into apologizing. It didn't sort of matter. It was a requirement. It wasn't like an optional thing. I once had a massive argument with one of my teachers about it, saying I don't want to go, and he was like, well, you have to. It's a school thing. And I was saying things like, would you make a Muslim go if they didn't want to go? And he said, well, probably not. And I said, well, what's the difference then? Stop treating people differently on the basis of religion. That's called bigotry. Got into a huge argument about it. But certainly when I was a believer, yeah, I was in the confessional booth every now and again.
What age was that?
What age was what? The
Like when you had to do confessional and stuff?
Oh, that was my secondary school. So even sort of,
Seriously?
yes, yeah.
So how old is that?
So it's I left. You would leave if you stay on. You can do A levels at that place as well. So if I'd have stayed and done that, it would have been sort of 18 when you'd leave. Yeah, up until you're 18 years old, sort of these necessary services that they put on as a Catholic school. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, and this is one of the things that people often say. If you get rid of the church, you get rid of certain things like your school was funded by a church. I'm sure they could have found the funding elsewhere, and I'm not particularly in favor of somebody funding a school if they then have to instill their questionable practices into it as well. It's just perpetuating this idea. Look, you're a sinner. There's something wrong with you. You need to apologize, and you need to keep apologizing and do it regularly. Because if you don't, well, let's not go there. But I think you can understand. I mean, this is being told to children. I mean, what kind of a responsible schooling system will do this kind of thing? You have to accept the necessary corollary. You can't just say, you need to say sorry, and here's a service providing you the opportunity. Because if a student asks, well, why do I need to say sorry? And they say, because you've sinned. And what does that matter? What happens if I sin? You have to accept the fact that you are teaching children that they're going to hell. And this is not healthy. This is not healthy behavior.
Although that's exactly what they're doing, you just know that the answer is no, Alex. You're taking that out of context.
Yes.
You need to look at it. Blah blah.
Yeah, it's like the I've seen videos in the past. I think someone like Non-Stam Collector did a little skit where they were like, somebody was taking quotes out of the Quran, and they were saying all these very nice quotes. They were like, the Quran says to kill an innocent person is to kill all mankind, and the Muslim goes, yeah, it's lovely. See, the Quran's absolutely peaceful. I told you. And then he says a bad verse at the end. Then when he finally says a bad verse, he goes, "Oh, you're taking that out of context. You need to look at all the nice verses. Yeah, you just take them as they are. But with the bad verses, you're getting it all wrong. It's all about context. You have to read the whole thing."
The context of that exact verse that you quoted.
Yes,
if you look at the context, the very next verse talks about how, but if you don't believe in Allah, you're going to burn in hell for all eternity.
But also, it's not only that. This is the most infuriating Quranic line that's used by apologists. Is this idea: if you kill an innocent person, it's as though you've killed all of mankind. Well, I'm sorry, but what does the Quran specify as an innocent person? Mm-hmm. None of us would count in that. None of us. We're all sinners. No, it doesn't include apostates, nor homosexuals, adulterers, and and their definition of adultery is crazy. All sorts of so-called crimes and sins. You're not an innocent person. So really, what that's saying is to kill another Muslim, a practicing Muslim, is to kill all of mankind. Well, isn't that the problem we have in the first place? This sort of tribalism. We stick together. We can't harm each other, but it's us against the world. In fact, in doing so, they're highlighting a verse which is actually making the problem worse. And most of the peaceful verses, or so-called peaceful verses, are in fact, if you read further into them, a lot more questionable. But again, I would much prefer that people interpret them peacefully. I'm in a bit of a difficult situation because I know that they're interpreting them in a rather sort of roundabout way. They're rationalizing in a sense. But I kind of, in one mind, I want to say, look, you're doing this wrong. The Quran is obviously a violent book. But then my worry is, well, do you really want to convince a devout Muslim that the Quran is a violent verse and that Allah wants them to be violent against non-believers? I'm not sure that that's such a good idea. So you have to be very careful and tread quite lightly with that kind of thing.
This comes down to the interview that I did with Armin Navabi, and he's an ex-Muslim activist. And he says, rather than trying to reform the Quran and say, well, this verse means something peaceful and this verse, you have to do that to thousands of different verses. And instead, he's like, why not just, take a baby step by sowing the seed of doubt and telling people, how do you know? What is your evidence for this? And if you can encourage them to have a little bit of doubt, they're less likely to blow themselves up in a marketplace if they're not 100% certain that they're going to get, paradise right afterwards.
I think you cannot, it's not, I wouldn't be like to be taken out of context as saying something along the lines of all terrorists are religious. But it is the case that if you are going to kill yourself in the pursuit of any aim, be it political or religious, you have to have conviction in your beliefs. There is no way that you could possibly blow yourself up if you don't genuinely believe that you're going to paradise. There's no other way that it can happen.
There is one way. just to play devil's advocate, you could be in a situation where people basically are holding your family ransom in the name of religion, normally, saying that if you don't do this, we're going to do this.
Well,
that happens too.
Yes, I would have more sympathy for Salman Abedi if it turned out that his family were being held ransom and ISIS was forcing him to blow himself up in an Ariana Grande concert, but I don't think that was the case. But you're right. Yeah, there are other instances, of course.
All right, so I want to get to a couple of these questions. First, Chris, Atheist Power, instead of saying, oh my God, why not say, oh my Gandalf as an alternative?
Seems fair.
I like that.
And then, hang on, there's one down here. What is, and I'm going to direct some of these questions at different people. Steve, why is truth important? Why should we, try to follow the truth? I forget who asked that. Riley Childers. He says, what about the importance of truth? I'm not sure exactly what he's asking, but I guess why is truth important?
Is Steve still with us?
Did Steve leave? Oh, Steve, he's turned into a blank wall. Steve, like God, isn't here.
He's been taken. It's the rapture. It's beginning, like they've all been saying on Twitter.
Dave's not here. I mean, Steve.
Did you not see him? He just got lifted up into the sky. It's the beginning of the end, everybody. Say your prayers.
Melly asked, and I'll direct this one at Rachel then, what are your thoughts on raising kids religious? Is it all right and should it be tolerated? We kind of talked about this a little bit. Is it cruel?
I'm kind of in two minds. Like, I wouldn't hide religion from a kid, but I wouldn't raise them religious either. Whereas my brother and sister-in-law are kind of teaching Isaac about religion and stuff, but he's only 3. So I kind of feel like it's maybe a bit early for him, but kind of what else are they supposed to do because it's their lifestyle? It's not like they're hiding atheism from him either, because he watches my videos and he's fine with me and my sister. So there's 3 of us. It's me, my brother, and sister. They're absolutely fine with me and my sister talking to him about this kind of thing. They don't have an issue with it, and they're very happy for him to like wait until he grows up to decide whether he wants to be baptized or not, which I really respect. Yeah, no, I think as long as you give the kid a choice, it's not too bad what you tell them when they're young. At the same time, I've done a lot of videos recently on Ken Ham's books for kids, and there's some horrific stuff in there. Like, there was one line literally that said something like, God said, obey or die, and it was like written into a little rhyming couplet, and it's like, you can't say that to a kid. Just stop.
It's like Matt Dillahunty has a line where he says, teach a child one religion, you indoctrinate them, teach them all, you inoculate them. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I
actually have a video going out today in like just over an hour now, which features this guy who he has like a Christian YouTube channel, and he got his 2- and 3-year-old daughters to recite Bible verses for a video, and they can barely speak, they can barely get the words out. And they're there quoting Bible verses. And I just found it so disturbing that I kind of had to talk about it.
That was my childhood.
Have you seen? Have any of you seen that clip from? There was an old Oprah Winfrey show. Not that I watch it very often, but I found it on YouTube where there's this. The
preacher one.
Yes, there's the son of the preacher, and they ask him.
Video,
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, they ask him to recite something from the Bible himself and then interpret it, and he just stands up and bellows this incredible recitation of the Bible, and then the people in the audience say, well, what did that actually mean? And he just sort of goes, well, it means just what I said it did. And it's like you don't understand. You poor child. I'm actually making a video about this myself. I filmed it today. I'm not as organized as to have scheduled videos and whatnot. I'm sort of a bit all over the place, but I'm responding to a soundbite I found from the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, who a lot of people have sent his work to me before. Generally speaking, it's sort of not a field that I'm interested in covering, or he'll be talking about, like, if he's talking about atheism, it's usually in terms of free will, and I don't believe in free will, so that's a bit difficult. But this specific soundbite was on the topic of bringing up children religiously, teaching children they're going to hell. Is that child abuse? And he was arguing, no, it's fine to do that. And I have this sort of big piece about how it's bizarre, because someone like Ben Shapiro, I don't know how familiar you guys are with him.
Yeah, very affiliated.
Yeah, he's speaking at Berkeley today, isn't he? Which is, I think that's happening today, isn't it? The big Berkeley speech, which is causing a ruckus. But anyway, he, whether you find yourself in agreement with his positions or not, he always is able to defend his positions. Every single time he has genuine, like, rational arguments and empirical data that he can put behind his arguments, no matter what. Except for when he talks about religion. This is something I've noticed. Even if you disagree with the methods in which he sort of defends his opinions, he can defend them all. But with religious stuff, he just sort of puts it out there. And suddenly he starts appealing to faith. And it's so bizarre to see this suspension of critical thinking from someone who usually is quite respectable on that front. But he just absolutely misses the point. And he says things like, one of the points he makes, which absolutely astounded me, was in this video. It was just sort of a bit on the side almost. But he said something along the lines of, well, look, these parents aren't teaching, you know, some kind of belief. They genuinely believe this stuff to be true, and therefore it's not child abuse. What kind of an argument is that? How can you possibly say something like that? And it all slips under the radar because nobody particularly cares about his religious beliefs as much as they do about his political beliefs. So nobody sort of brings it up. But I couldn't help myself. I had to take it. I had to respond to it.
So by that same argument, is it okay for Aztecs to brutally slaughter and sacrifice people to the gods because they genuinely believe that it's the right thing to do?
Exactly. Yes. Well, I almost feel as though it was somewhat of maybe like a slip of the tongue. I mean, it was so bewildering the way he just sort of slipped it in there that I think maybe he wasn't thinking straight or something.
I wonder how he would respond to the quandary that, you know, I've put to creationists before, where, you know, if God asked you to sacrifice your child, would you do it? Because they put Abraham up on a pedestal for you know, nearly sacrificing Isaac.
Have you seen Frank Turek in response to that?
I haven't seen his response to it.
So
but
he's on a college campus, as he does. That's what he does. He travels around and speaks to college audiences. And when one student stands up and asks him, if God asks you to kill your child, would you do it? And he starts doing the whole evasive thing, very much like, oh, well, you know, I wouldn't know if it was really God, whatever. But this guy is very, you know, I had respect for him because he really pushed him into a corner and said, listen, like, let's just say, you know, this is God for certain. You absolutely know that this is God, and he tells you to sacrifice your child. Bearing in mind, Frank Turek has children. Would you sacrifice their child? And Frank Turek says, and I know this is God, and he says, yeah. And he says, well, then, yeah, I would.
But here's a thing, and it goes back to something you were saying earlier on. You get the wishy-washy, taking everything out of context, and like, I agree with you. I prefer that. But I have more respect for the people that read it and actually listen and actually digest what it says. So the people that, for example, the Westboro, was it the West Baptist Church?
Westboro Baptist.
Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah. They are taking a decent reading out of the Holy Bible. That's the problem. That's the problem. The people that we like, the people that we go, oh, this is, you know, he's not too bad. All we mean when we say that basically, fundamentalists of Christianity and Islam are people that take it seriously. And yet they're labeled like they're the mental ones. They're the ones taking it seriously. It just drives me nuts that, particularly, not to bring politics into it, the left cannot see that. Drives me mental.
It's like the fundamentalists are the ones that adhere to the fundamentals of the teaching of their book.
Exactly. Sam Harris said the only problem with Islamic fundamentalism is the fundamentals of Islam.
Yeah. Now, there's someone in the chat, James Woodwright, has asked, I know I told him that my next video is coming out this Saturday. He wants to know when the rest of you guys are releasing your next one.
Tomorrow.
When, Rachel?
In an hour.
In an hour? Steve's tomorrow, and Alex?
When I get around. I have it filmed.
It's a surprise.
I need to do some editing, but probably today or tomorrow, with luck, today or tomorrow. But don't hold your breath. I'm pretty bad with these things.
So pretty much all of us.
Being a student is not easy, as I'm sure that others can attest to, and I know it's not really much of an excuse because I could just come up with some kind of schedule, but I'm not really that kind of person. So I try my very best, but what is it they say, quality over quantity or some
so in response like to James, just go and subscribe to all of these channels and click the little bell buttons,
the little bell,
and then you'll make sure that you don't miss it.
And follow us on Twitter while you're at it, and you can hop over to the merch store if you really feel like it. I mean,
yeah. What's everyone's Twitters while we're at it?
Mine's just Rachel Oates, but with a 0 instead of an Oates.
That's hip. I like that.
You're the cool one of the group.
Oh, yeah. I knew that already.
Well, my gamer tag on Xbox Live used to be Rolling Stoner, and I had a little a 0 instead of the O. So yeah, I can sympathize.
You mean, Rachel, your Twitter handle isn't Evil Satanist 666?
Oh, that was a backup.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
As long as I haven't been following the wrong
No.
Twitter account.
For a while, it was like, I like eating babies, but apparently Twitter found that controversial. Don't know why.
Twitter's just been blocking everyone these days.
Yeah, I think Let's not get into that, shall we? I'm just Cosmic Skeptic. I got very lucky in this aspect because it's such a sort of odd name, really, that it wasn't taken anywhere. So I've got the domains, the Facebook, Twitter. So anywhere people need to find me, it's just Cosmic Skeptic, except Tumblr. Somebody had it on there, which I don't use, but there you go. So yeah.
Someone took my Tumblr too, but
Awful.
I got most of the big ones. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. Most of you guys, if you're watching on my channel, you probably already are familiar, but mine is at Holy Koolaid. What were you gonna say, Rachel? And then we'll get to Alex with Never Ever Have I Ever.
Although wait, before we do, Steve, your Twitter.
Oh, we didn't, Steve. I'm so sorry. I blame it on the alcohol.
Yeah, it's Rationality rule. I couldn't get the S because some very nice person took it before me.
I hear that S's are expensive these days.
Yeah, they're so expensive. I just couldn't afford it. So I thought, no, I'm gonna boycott you. Don't want it. Yeah.
At least if you're saying it, out loud in your recording, you can avoid the sibilance, from like the high S's. That was a dumb joke. But all right, what were you gonna say, Rachel?
Oh, I was just gonna complain about people having the same name as me, because like I wanted Rachel Oates with like a normal O, because that's what my email address is. And I was like, I'm gonna get this. Except it turns out that I was setting up all my social media accounts when I was still doing photography for like money. Turns out there are 2 other Rachel Oateses who are photographers. And it was really annoying because we were all competing for like usernames and websites and things like that. But the thing is, I specialized in gig photography. One of them does pet photography and the other one does fashion. So we're all doing really different things, but we all have exactly the same name, exactly the same spelling, and it was really, really annoying. So I was just
what if a fashionable pet
0.
was doing a gig? Who would they hire?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I do gigs like music and bands and stuff. So unless you have a band of just like dogs, which would be amazing. Actually, I would pay to see that.
Yeah, just if they beatbox at different frequencies, you just like speak.
Oh, I would love that so much. Can someone please set that up? When I get my dog, I'm going to teach him to sing.
Oh gosh,
that's dog cruelty.
No. Sorry, I love dogs. They're my favorite thing.
Yeah, it's like the dyslexic theist who believed in dog. Alex, your turn.
Yes. Okay. So I saw a comment on the live chat actually that I'm going to use. Although this is probably going to end up in me drinking myself. It was from Jonathan. Never have I ever been demonetized on YouTube.
Oh.
All of our videos, or just some?
Some, any.
On that note,
Rachel, you've never been demonetized.
You might want to go. You might want to go check. You might want to go check right now, because literally, like, I was never demonetized until like a day or 2 ago, and I just checked my channel and I had like 6 videos demonetized.
I've been checking every day because I've been paranoid, and I've been okay so far.
Wait, Alex, you got a notification?
Well, it was I'd already had some demonetized, but then in my dashboard I got this little thing that said, "Have you noticed your ad revenue go down recently?" or something like that. And I don't really, ad revenue is not great for me because all of my adverts are things like, people have been telling me that my adverts have been things like Islamic dating services and stuff, because the algorithm doesn't read it very well. So I didn't pay attention, but I went through and a few of my videos had been demonetized. The ones that I've got demonetized are my video about Charlottesville, understandably, but also weirdly, like, some of my videos which you'd think might have been demonetized aren't, like talking about the niqab, for instance. That's all fine. But then my response to Frank Turek is for some reason demonetized. It's very weird how it's worked out.
I just wanted to point out something that I don't want to scare you, but it's just something that if you don't know how the algorithm works, if your content is demonetized, so particularly to the YouTubers, if they're listening, the algorithm, let's just say it's doing well, the retention's high, and normally if it was monetized, YouTube would push it out and it would start suggesting it to others and putting it in their browse features. They won't do it if it's not monetized because they don't make money out of it. That's the problem. They say, we're not stopping you creating the content that you want to create, but they are. That's exactly what they're doing, but it's for a backhanded way that they're not intending to, but that is how it works. If your content's not monetized because you chose to take on a subject that wasn't fluffy, it's just not going to get exposure from YouTube, and that's a big problem.
Well, and a couple of my videos that I had to appeal were right around 100,000 views, and so it's like YouTube's like suggesting it, it's getting a lot of views. As soon as it gets demonetized, it completely plateaus, and even if you monetize it again, you never get that momentum back. You never,
The last week, I had 1,000 subs come from my video called "You Can't Prove That God Doesn't Exist" debunked, but it got flagged and it got demonetized. I messaged them and they fixed it, but like you said, it's too late. The damage is done. It's no longer trending. It's no longer bringing in an audience. So, Yeah, and
GM Skeptic has just said in the comments that he's also been hit by the demonetization. I think anybody who talks about this sort of stuff is going to get. You sort of have to accept that there's going to be some troubles. You're probably going to be in email correspondence with YouTube every now and again, but it's frustrating, and I hadn't really thought about it that way, Steve. Like you say, it's not just a money thing, because I think we can all agree that's not really what we think. That's not the problem. That's not the consideration. It's that firstly, YouTube is using this demonetization to almost ideologically divide people. Also, news channels are getting hit because if they're talking about world affairs, and world affairs are not always pretty, they'll get demonetized. And the algorithm, because there isn't possibly enough people working for YouTube to check every video, it's done automatically. So if you have a questionable word in your tags or something of the sort, you'll get flagged. And there's a big ruckus about it in the YouTube community, but which is one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for platforms like Patreon.
Exactly, that's what I wanted to say. I just couldn't do this without Patreon.
Though you do get a bit worried when you see people like the Lauren Southern, who recently got, and I think Sam Harris recently said that he was going to stop using Patreon in response to the Lauren Southern thing. And I don't know whether that was sort of a moral contention or whether he was just worried about the how volatile it was. But people are starting to even get a little bit questionable about that. But I would
recommend that everyone do, if you have a Patreon account, is Lauren Southern. I can kind of see why she got deplatformed, because some of her stuff, she doesn't self-identify as a white nationalist, but then you watch some of her videos, and I'm not going to go into it or stir up controversy, but if you have a Patreon account, what I would recommend is click in your patron manager, view all patrons, and you can see all of the emails. Save that as a CSV, because then at the very least you have an email list. So if you lose your entire Patreon account, you can still shoot out an email to all of your patrons and be like, hey guys, here's what's going on. If you want to support me through PayPal or whatever other,
that's a good idea.
Donation, you can.
I understand why Sam Harris did it. It was basically, and it is like what I was saying with the video where I took on blasphemy laws. You either have free speech or you don't. You cannot have grey areas. You just can't. That's just not how it works. And YouTube particularly has grey areas. They just arbitrarily define, hey, this counts as hate. This, this doesn't work. And unfortunately, with Patreon doing that, I'm not too concerned about Patreon, because they're not as prolific in that sense as YouTube. But with them just saying, oh, you can't be supported, that is bad. Like, I do see where Harris is coming from, because so many people say Harris is bad because they haven't read any of his work. Well, they've just read, ironically, news channels reporting what he's not saying. So it is a bad situation. But yeah, just for anyone out there, Patreon is unfortunately or fortunately the way to go. And just to everyone that does support all of us, I'm sure you would echo it as well. Thank you so much, because we couldn't do it without you now.
Yeah, you guys all have Patreon accounts.
I don't.
As well, right? Rachel, you don't?
You don't?
Not yet, no. I'm sorry, my tongue's grumbling. Yeah, no, not yet. I've been thinking about setting one up, and a couple of my subscribers have mentioned it, but I haven't got around to it yet.
You should. You have great content.
Oh,
yeah, great.
No, I know the feeling though. I remember when I was considering setting up a Patreon, I wasn't quite sure when the right time was, and I had a few people mention it, and I thought, well, is it like, should I really do this? Is it going to be like a brand new thing that I have to take care of? But tell you what, as soon as I set it up and started seeing the support from people, and I don't just mean monetarily, I mean like through messages and numbers of people who were just genuinely like bemusing with me with their kindness, it was absolutely the right thing to do. I certainly recommend it. I think
not only do people... Sorry, Alex, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was done. You go ahead.
Sorry, so British. Sorry. No, just
I
one
thought
thing.
sorry was a Canadian thing.
Say again?
I thought saying sorry was a Canadian thing.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Sorry for interrupting.
Sorry, yeah, it's Canadian. No, the other thing about the Patreon is I understood that I would get financial support in order to do this, but one of the best things is just how much people help you in other areas. There's I don't know if you noticed in my video, there's particularly an Eagle at the end within the patrons. He's been with me for a long time. I won't mention his name. I know he's watching, but this person's watched my content and spotted so many spelling errors because I'm dyslexic. So thank you for that. But the point being is that it helps build a community and it really pushes you in a good direction. So I would definitely give it a go if I were you, Rachel. You've got nothing to lose.
That sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, it's nice because there are definitely certain subscribers who I see like commenting on every video and who like are really, really supportive, and I like that. And I think it'd be nice to be able to give something like back a little bit more to like those people and be able to like interact with them a bit more as well. So yeah, I don't know, maybe it'd be good. We'll see.
So who's next? Because this needs to be drank.
Yeah, I think it's Rachel's turn.
Oh,
or should we give you a second to come up with one?
No, I've got one. Never have I ever committed one of the 7 deadly sins.
Wait, what?
Wait. So there's gluttony, lust, murder. Is murder one? Theft? What are the 7 deadly sins? I'm not Catholic.
Yeah.
Wait, that goes from benign to mental.
Sorry, I'll let you do it.
No, you do it. I don't think I've ever heard of it, or if I have.
Wait, hold on, can I specify? Does this mean I'm going to have to drink 7 times?
Oh, have you done all 7?
Wait, but one of the 7 deadly sins, it says, is sorrow/despair/despondency.
Oh, really? I didn't know that one.
And then there's wrath, there's vainglory. You're into like modeling and fashion. You've never been guilty of vainglory.
Bottoms up, everybody.
I think Rachel has to drink twice.
You mean 2 million?
Oh, like downing my wine for that one.
Oh. That's
all
not
right,
a nice
Steve.
thing to down. Oh, right. Back to me. Okay. According to religion. Never have I ever, at least in my mind, lost a debate against a religious person.
I'm not sure any of us are gonna drink to that one.
I'm trying to remember. I wouldn't. Not to say that I've won every debate, but I don't think there's ever been like an obliteration where I felt like I've literally I was just destroyed.
I've lost as an atheist arguing, or as a Christian arguing against atheists before I deconverted.
By category, I think that means that you lost. So yeah, you drink. Get going.
I'm gonna drink for this one.
I will say, by the way,
not because I'm a terrible debater. Sorry, don't go on.
No, I have had situations where, while I think that I've been more logically coherent overall, they've pointed out something that I was wrong on. The unfortunate thing is that was like an auxiliary to the main thing, and that's all they focus on. So in their mind, they won the argument. Which is
in that sense, I'd certainly drink. Yeah, I've had that happen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I'm drinking because I've had kind of debates where I've been the one to walk away because I felt they've been at inappropriate times. Like there was a time at my nephew's dedication, which is like not a christening, but it was like saying we're gonna raise him like with our beliefs, and it was like a little celebration for him basically. And I had people from my brother's church coming up to me trying to debate me because I was like the only atheist there. And again, at my brother's wedding, people were coming up to me trying to debate me because I was an atheist. And at those points, you could say that I lost because I was the one to walk away and say, I don't want to have this conversation right now.
Yeah, but that's hardly losing. I mean, there's a difference between losing a debate and refusing a debate. I will just say, for anybody who's just tuned in, this isn't some kind of Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. It's just the way that you said the way that you said. Well, you know, I'm drinking because this one time, you know, I had to refuse this debate, and I felt like maybe I lost the debate, and that's why I'm drinking. And it just sounds a bit.
Alcoholics Anonymous. There's nothing anonymous about it.
You have it, so I'm drinking because I eat babies. You know, just take that clip from the beginning.
Yeah.
It can't be Alcoholics Anonymous if it's a public live broadcast.
This is true.
Well, how about like proud alcoholics then?
See, I wouldn't call myself an alcoholic because I really don't drink outside of social circumstances hardly at all. Like I drink for camaraderie, not for effect.
If anybody is tuning in, I promise you this isn't just some kind of like alcoholics enthusiast meeting. It's just it's beginning to sound like one. I think we all have a certain affection, but don't worry, it's not so bad. But no, there's a difference between being an alcoholic and somebody who enjoys alcohol. There's a fine line, but you're only as alcoholic as you feel, or something.
Yeah, it's weird though that again with like all arguments really, or all assertions, it depends on how you define alcoholic. Because I know people that can drink, especially when I was at uni, people that could drink an unbelievable amount of alcohol, but the body just didn't make them drunk. So it's not a problem. Whereas I know other people which can drink one can and they become a very nasty and vile person. I would say that's the alcoholic, but it really depends on how you define it.
I think it's to do with like dependency and if you feel you have to drink or not. Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
This is my first drink in like a week, 2 weeks. I don't know, because that's the thing. I only ever drink it socially, or like occasionally I'll have a nice glass of wine with a meal if me and Dan are having like date night. But yeah, no, the people who kind of feel like they have to drink every day, or if they're in a social setting and think they have to drink as well, I think that can be a kind of bit of a warning sign. Like if you can't have fun without alcohol.
Yeah, that's
true.
true.
The thing.
It just if Alex is following in Hitchin's footsteps, I assume that you drank 10 minutes before joining us here, and then 10 minutes before that. Or...
One area of Hitchens' life where I probably wouldn't want to follow him is the affinity for smoking and alcohol. As that didn't end too well for him, and I'm not really looking forward to that kind of life for myself. So no, actually, I'm usually quite responsible with these things.
Yeah, Alex, can I just say, if you continue to read as much as you do, then by the time you get to Hitchens' age, you'll. I mean, hell, you're already an extremely valuable asset to the atheist movement and to secular activism.
Stop it,
but if you continue on this trend, don't drink yourself to an early grave by 60. Especially with medicine getting better and better, you'll have it'll be like a maintenance on a car. You'll just swap out kidneys and hearts with like 3D printed organs left and right, and you'll live to like 150 and demolish religion and see it come to a early end.
Well, I do take satisfaction in debating religious people, and I think the most fun. I mean, how better a way to debate with somebody than when you're already drunk and able to do it still. Although I must say, a lot of people do accuse me of copying Christopher Hitchens in many aspects of life, that will not be one of them, I can assure you. Well, I can try my hardest, is what I can promise.
Yeah. All right. So it's I think, Steve, you just went, right?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah.
So it's my turn. Can I switch it up? Because I've done literally every religious thing I can possibly think of as the ultra religious one in the group. So can I do? I have done something, and then if you haven't, do you have to take a drink?
Okay, you can start winning now.
Since I've already been drinking to every single one of these.
Only because I want to start drinking.
Okay.
Wait, so if you haven't done it, you drink?
Yeah. I have worked as a missionary.
God damn it.
No. I must say, I've worked as an altar boy, if that counts, but I don't think that's quite close enough.
Yeah.
This reminds me of so when I was in uni, I was part of the photography society, and we used to go on tour twice a year. And this one time we were in Barcelona, and we decided we were in this pub that we really didn't like. We were going to play a game of Never Have Ever, but we wanted to get as drunk as quickly as possible. So we all bought really, really strong cocktails, and we decided to play the most ridiculous game of Never Have I Ever. And we made sure we said stuff that we'd all done, and we went like quick fire around all of us. It was like, never have I ever been on a plane, and we'd all traveled on a plane to Barcelona. It's like, never have I ever been in Spain, never have I ever been to university, and we were all university students. And it was just the stupidest game we've ever played, but it got us all drunk.
So it's basically just an excuse for drinking.
Oh yeah, but it was so fun. It's basically, it was like never have ever in terms of like making sure the most people had done it, but it was just to the most ridiculous basic level. It was great fun.
One thing I've never understood about drinking games is that it seems that if you lose the round, you take a drink. That doesn't really compute for me.
All right, so we have a question from the chat that says Cosmic Skeptic has asked before, or has said before, that one of the worst arguments against the God position is the problem of evil. What do you think the best argument is?
Best argument against God?
The best argument for God.
For God, okay. Which shit smells the nicest?
I actually know one that is good.
Yeah. Go ahead.
This is why, particularly creationists and a lot of Christians, do not want to deal with evolution. The watchmaker argument. Looking around and seeing that everything is the way it is, and knowing that why are you here rather than not here? These kind of questions, which may not be even questions themselves. It might be asking what color is jealousy, because they are intuitive and you want answers to them, even if they aren't questions. They're very compelling, which is why evolution is so important, because it shows you exactly how complex and seemingly designed organisms, such as humans, can and have arisen from an unconscious natural process. So until Darwin came along, I can totally see why most people at least got to deism.
I agree with you, actually. Yeah. I think that it depends on how the question's being asked. So if you're talking about an argument that would convince me, it'd be difficult. If you're talking about the most convincing argument for other people, or if I was trying to be a charlatan and trying to convince somebody, knowing full well that the arguments maybe weren't amazing, I have to say that something like the watchmaker argument, or there's a reason that these arguments are so popular and have lasted for so long, is because they are the ones that convince people. They are the ones that people go to. So I think in that sense, I would probably agree with you that maybe the sort of teleological argument might be better, but also the whole, where did it come from? The sort of cosmological arguments, Thomas Aquinas's first three ways, whatnot, how there must have been some kind of first mover, Aristotelian prime mover, whatever you want to call it. But if you wanted to convince me that the most sort of convincing argument that I've heard that's actually given me pause for thought, I think for a time, personally, I was listening to William Lane Craig a lot, and one of the things that he said was something along the lines of, well, look, if the universe needs a cause, and basically if the cause, whatever caused the universe, was infinite, an infinite being because it's outside of time, but the universe itself is finite, you cannot have an infinite cause and a finite effect without there being some kind of choice being made, some kind of point in time at which whatever this cause was decided to make the universe, because otherwise they'd both be infinite or both be finite. It doesn't make sense to have one being infinite and one not. That can't work. And it took me a lot of thinking to realize exactly, it didn't sit right with me, but I couldn't immediately sort of figure out how I could come back on that. Eventually I suddenly realized that, well, hang on, if this is, you can't talk about time scales if this cause is outside of time. That's sort of, it doesn't work. But it took me a while to get there. And for a moment I was thinking, you know what, that has some kind of grit to it. It didn't convince me of anything, but it was difficult for me to articulate a rebuttal to it immediately, if that sort of satisfies the question.
I just wanted to raise something really interesting. To anyone listening as well, if you look up Sean Carroll talking about the Big Bang, he will blow your mind with what you think is true not being true, and he will back it up with science. Particularly, for a very long time, I don't know if you guys are the case, and I don't know if it's the case for people watching, was off the opinion or off the the conviction. I was convinced that the universe did have a beginning at the Big Bang, and therefore there was something at the beginning. But what Sean Carroll very eloquently puts across, he takes hard science and puts it into a colloquial language that we can all understand. That's not the case. That's not an assertion that's supported. Einstein's general relativity points to that being the case, but we know that Einstein's general relativity is actually wrong when it's applied to certain things, just as Newton's laws are wrong when applied to celestial bodies. So we actually don't know if the universe had a beginning. So the assertion hasn't met the burden of proof of being true. So
Yes.
it's just another layer that normally creationists that present this argument don't expect you to say that, because they even aren't aware often of that fact.
Well, and the thing is, you know, it's like you were saying, general relativity breaks down when the universe gets down to the size of, like, you know, an atom. When you have something like the Big Bang that occurs, you know, general relativity and quantum mechanics are not they're not really compatible. And it's like one, you know, talks about, you know, how we can think about the micro scale, and the other about like the cosmos as a whole, and they work great within their own magisteria, if you will. But we just don't know once you get back to, you know, down to that size. So by the way, sorry I slipped out for a half a second. This booze has gone through me like a spaghetti strainer.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I'm nearly ready to go again as well.
All right, so one quick question from the panel. It says, or not the panel, the chat. If the panel was in The Wizard of Oz, who would be the lion, who would be the scarecrow, and who would be the Tin Man? I think that they're just assuming that Rachel is Dorothy by default.
Oh, wow, they're assuming her gender. How dare they? Oh, my God.
Why can't I be Toto? Or the wizard?
I'll tell you what, because it's your celebration, you decide who's who. You give everyone a character, and I will be angry with whichever one you give me.
All right, I'm going to say Ken Ham is Tin Man, because he doesn't have a brain.
And then Joel Osteen would it therefore be the Scarecrow, right? Or whoever the one that doesn't have a heart. I forget. I haven't said it in a while.
No, Scarecrow. Sorry, Ken Ham would be Scarecrow because of the brain.
The brain.
Tin Man doesn't have the heart, so that would be Osteen.
Joel Osteen, yeah.
And then what is it that the lion doesn't have? Like,
he doesn't have courage.
Doesn't have courage, but
I'll tell you what you find when you see a Christian, particularly, for example, without courage. They always go, "It's not me that's judging you for being gay and choosing to be gay. It's God." That's
So God doesn't send you to hell.
Convictions.
Yeah, God doesn't send you to hell. You send yourself to hell. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the coward.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, your turn next for coming up with a never ever have I ever, or I have done something.
Come back to me already. Okay.
While you're coming up with one, G-Rex Z1 asked, will religion ever die out, or are we stuck with it? I'm going to throw that question at Rachel.
Oh, God. We can wish. But I feel like as long as people have questions about what's going to happen after we die, and until we can answer things like how the universe began, like with an actual, real, definite answer, people are still going to rely on religion because it's a comfort thing.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, that's just my opinion.
Awesome. I want to give a quick shout out to the Geek Room. They are in the chat as well. They have a YouTube channel, and they look at various news events and stuff from an atheistic perspective. And I was on their show, I think, a week ago or something, and they were a lot of fun. So,
awesome.
All right, Alex, have you come up with one?
Yeah. So I forget if I'm supposed to be saying something I have done or haven't.
Either one, you decide.
Also, just by the way, on the question you asked a moment ago about whether religion will ever, just because I couldn't help it, but it reminded me of a quote by Sigmund Freud, his opinion of the matter was we will always have religion as long as people are afraid of death.
Exactly.
Yes, I don't personally. I don't think it'll ever disappear. I think at the best case scenario, what we're going to end up with is a kind of flat Earth situation where there are always going to be some group of people who believe this stuff, but we can work towards a majority. But anyway, am I saying something? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, Steve
or whoever.
Well,
sorry. I was just thinking if we had a society at some point where we were able to prevent death, So we understood how the aging mechanism works. We understood cancer. I think then you would actually be able to kill beliefs in the afterlife. And at that point, you would maybe, for all intent and purposes, you can't kill it 100%, but for all intent and purposes, you could kill religion.
I couldn't see it happening, though.
Could I propose a thought experiment? Let's say that computing power continues, Moore's law continues for another 50 years, to the point where computers are smarter than humans. They know everything. They have access to all the information on the internet, as well as critical thinking abilities, and they surpass us on every kind of Turing test you could possibly have. And we find a way to augment our intelligence with AI. So, we're able to just plug in, if you will, to the matrix. We still have the ability to think and feel and think rationally and critically like we do now, but suddenly we have access to all of the world's information and we can just instantly pull it up. Now, let's say that every single person who plugs into this system instantly becomes an atheist. Just instantly is like, oh, well, shit, this is all made up. It's all fake. Do you think that would be the death of religion, or do you think that there would be some hardcore Luddite neophobes who would resist even plugging into the system because they don't necessarily care about the truth so much as preserving their belief system?
I see two situations. The first being, like you say, some people refusing to administer the medicine altogether. But although, by the way, I would be a bit. If we did live in a world where that happened, I wouldn't want to probably take part myself, partly because that ruins some of the joy of learning, but secondly because I'm already counting up the ways that something like that could be corrupted in my mind, and it's just scaring me into oblivion. But I think the other way that it could be avoided is some sort of instance. I don't know if any of you have read 1984, but the principle of doublethink is very strong among theists already, and so I think it could be employed in this sense as well, in the sense that as convinced as you are in one thing, you can also hold a contradictory belief at the same time, because these people are almost being intellectually dishonest against themselves a lot of the time. I can see the same thing happening. It doesn't matter what you know, you can convince yourself to believe things if you really try hard enough, and if you look for the right kind of information. For instance, you might be convinced of one position, but if you don't want to believe it, you don't choose what you believe. So if you don't want to believe what you do believe at the moment, you can go looking for specific types of information and specific arguments to rebut that, just because you want to believe the other side. And so in that sense, if you had access to the entire world, what somebody would probably do is, if they suddenly realize they're an atheist, they might think, okay, no, I don't like this. I'm going to try and convince myself again that I believe in God. So they look for the information, the best arguments in favor to convince themselves. So I don't think it would see the end of religion.
What about the other two of you guys?
Rachel, you go first if you've...
Throw me in there. Yeah, no, I know. I think there's always going to be a part of people that want to believe there's something more to life than just what we have. Whether that's in believing in a god, or believing in ghosts and an afterlife, or whatever. I think there's always going to be a part of people that want to believe in something more. So I think no matter what we do, people are always going to try and find something that we don't understand yet and try and explain it away in some other way. But
so you think that the emotional, crazy, irrational side of us, even if we have perfect information, access to every kind of information, including how psychology in the brain works, that people will still have their cognitive abilities overpowered by their irrational side?
I think some people will, yeah, because we're not completely rational beings. No way. Even I, as someone who tries to think rationally about everything, will still act completely on emotion at times. Will still be completely overpowered by emotion and say silly things or do silly things. And I think there'll be some people who are more controlled by that than others.
Yeah. Well, a lot of this comes down to, epistemology and knowledge. Like, how do we know what we know? And so I have in the live chat, one of my longtime patrons, Greg Martin, has he recommended the book A Manual for Creating Atheists, which I did
I've heard of that, I think.
It's a fantastic read, and it talks about the Socratic method and asking questions to try to get to truth and figure out what truth is.
Yes, one of my patrons, I think, recommended that. I can't remember for the life of me. Somebody really recommended it to me. They really wanted me to read it.
It was the one atheist book in my local library.
Really?
Yeah.
It's by a guy named Peter Boghossian. And
Yes.
if you're familiar with, there's another YouTuber, he's also one of my patrons, is Anthony Magnabosco, and he goes out and he takes these methods to the street and he practices them. And he's very like open, and he just asks questions and he just films the interactions. It's amazing seeing how much more effective it is than just confrontational argument.
I think I know who you're talking about. The street epistemology chap.
Yeah.
Bold guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, I know exactly.
I did an interview with him. It was the first interview I ever did.
Oh,
it was rough too, because I didn't know anything about how to conduct an interview, and I've gotten better since then. I feel bad. The one I did with him at Meta, I did a horrible job, and my audio was terrible, and my introduction was really unprofessional. And if I could do that one again, I'd do it differently.
No, I know the feeling.
But
I'm an awful interviewer. I exactly sympathize with you.
You learn as you go. Like the one I just did with James Randi, I feel was a head and shoulders improvement over the rest. And I'm doing one coming up with.
I really enjoyed that one.
Cara Santa Maria, if you know who she is. That's going to be a really fun one.
You just did one with Matt Dillahunty, didn't you?
Me?
Who? Maybe it wasn't you. No, sorry. I'm thinking of a completely different person. Yeah, I thought that was you. No, it's somebody else. It's another friend of mine.
Do I have a doppelganger somewhere?
No, not even you. You look nothing like him. It's friend Lloyd Evans. He's also a YouTuber. Actually, talks about Jehovah's Witness stuff. He had just interviewed Matt Dillahunty. I completely just mixed up the. Ignore me. It's nothing to do with not at all.
Yeah,
nothing to do with this.
Too much alcohol.
Also, so Greg pledged. He just pledged $100 in the live super chat. If you guys have a particular question that you really want us to ask, you can use the super chat and we'll see it rather than being buried in all the other comments. We'll make sure that we get to every single super chat that you do. Greg, he didn't ask a question. He just said because he had to cancel his Patreon, but he's still here, and he's still very supportive. Greg, if you have any question posted in the regular chat, we'll make sure that we answer it, and everyone else who does a super chat will do that as well. And on that note, Rachel, do you have a never ever have I ever? Did we do Alex yet? Did we skip Alex or did we do him?
While you do that, I'm just going to quickly use the bathroom. You go ahead.
Okay.
Right. I've got one though, and this kind of like I have a question following on from this I want to ask you guys, but this is one that I have done, but I've been baptized. If you guys have, I think you should drink.
Ooh, what if we've been baptized twice?
Drink twice.
Ooh. Hang on one sec.
Yes. Yeah.
Alex, did you go or did we skip you? I'm blanking.
I can't remember. I think we may have skipped me, but I'm not offended. Don't worry.
All right. Do you have one?
Am I saying something I have done or haven't done? I'm still confused.
It's up to you. Like if you have done it, then everyone who hasn't has to drink, and if you haven't done it, then everyone who has to.
Here's something I haven't done, which might be quite ironic given the nature of the game. But I've never been to a mosque.
Oh. I'm gonna have to drink on
like
that
inside a mosque. I mean, I've never done it in my life. I realized the other day, never been inside a mosque. I've had no reason to.
We had a trip at school to a mosque, which is really cool. We got like a tour around it and shown everything. It's really interesting. It's good. Yeah. Now, the question I kind of want to ask you guys is, I've been kind of wanting to speak to some of the atheists about for a while, was this is way back now, like 10 years ago when I was at school. I was about sort of 14, 15, something like that. And one of my friends said something to me. And well, we were kind of having this... Okay, friends is a bit of an overstatement. But a girl I knew, we were talking. And I said something about being an atheist. And she turned around and said, but you've been baptized. How can you be an atheist? And I was like, but I don't believe in God. That makes me an atheist. And she's like, no, you've been baptized. You're a Christian for life. And I kind of just want to hear your thoughts on that, because I thought it was ridiculous. But
no, I'm still a Catholic as far as the Catholic Church is concerned. Yeah.
Really?
I was baptized. I was confirmed. I had my first Holy Communion. I went to church. As far as they're concerned, I'm still a Catholic. I think the only way that I can officially leave is if I send some letter to my bishop or something of the sort. I don't particularly care because I'm only still a Catholic by their terms, and I don't believe in their terms, so that means nothing to me. The one effect it does have in the real world is that when you hear these incredible claims of the Catholic Church saying that they have, however many hundreds of millions of followers in the world. Probably not the case. That's probably just how many people have been baptized, or basically how many babies have been shoved underwater. It says nothing about who actually believes. And then even among those who still believe, how many of them believe literally? How many of them actually believe in transubstantiation? How many of them actually believe in the virgin birth or immaculate conception or any of these kind of things? And the number starts to dwindle. So technically, I'm still a Catholic, but the whole concept is just ridiculous.
It's amazing how many people call themselves Christians and that don't even believe in the death and resurrection of Jesus, which is the core fundamental aspect of it. But Alex, according to Pentecostals, you were never a real Christian because you never spoke in tongues.
This is true. Well, how do you know? No, I haven't. Not really my kind of thing. I think Jesus camp kind of put me off that one.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I got christened when I was like 3 months old or something, and I was like, I had no choice in that. So why should that kind of determine what my religion is? Yeah,
you know, I don't get that as much. And Steve, think of one you're up next. But instead of having people tell me that, you know, oh, you're still a Christian, I have people tell me a lot, like, you were never a real Christian. And I went through all of this stuff. Like, I wasn't baptized as a baby. You know, it was very much of my own volition.
It's quite interesting.
Ready for the next one?
Absolutely.
Okay. Never have I ever wore any religious attire. Religious attire.
Religious attire. Like a cross? Does a cross count?
Yeah, sure.
After my grandma died, I wore her little crucifix necklace. It was less a religious thing and more like to be close to her, but yeah.
I was an altar boy, so I had the whole works.
Please tell me you have photos of that.
I don't think I do actually. No, it's a real shame. Yeah, but I don't think many people would take photos in church.
Profile picture.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think the only people don't tend to take photos in church of altar boys, except for perhaps some of the priests. Yeah, but I'm not about to go and ask. So no, not that I know of anyway.
So I guess it's my turn. I'm not going to do never have I ever. I'm going to do I have. When I was a kid, in my life, I used to believe in young Earth creationism. So if you didn't believe in young Earth creationism ever, then you have to drink.
When I was, I don't know if you count this. When I was like too young to really have sort of so young that you wouldn't even really blame me, but I would have just sort of not known. I would have probably just said, oh yeah, God probably made the earth, I don't know how many years ago. So I mean, kind of, but not really. Difficult.
I think we should still make him drink.
Make me drink. Yeah, yes, that's why I'm drinking. That's what it is.
I've got a interesting question that somebody asked probably about 10 minutes ago, but I just noted it down if you want it. It's one that I would like to know from you guys. But a guy called, I'm going to absolutely butcher his name, Alessandro, asked, how old were you when you first took a look at religion from an outer perspective and decided to become an atheist?
7.
So,
or 6 or
7, okay.
Younger. Yeah, I was tiny.
That's good.
All thanks to my sister. She doesn't even remember the conversation, but like I owe her so much.
Brilliant.
Well, my brother's a pagan, so I don't think I owe him much in my way of in my tendencies.
But how old were
I couldn't put a number on it. I think I was probably in my mid-teens. Because I didn't really. It wasn't so much that I thought religion was evil and therefore I quit. I quit and then I grew to believe it was evil. So I think around my mid-teens I started to stop believing, and it was only fairly recently, like in the past few years, that I really started to look and think, you know what, this isn't good. And I mean, I've only been making videos for a year, so probably a year or two before that, I would have really started thinking about this as something, because as soon as I get enthusiastic about something, I want to start talking about it. So it was relatively soon after I started really discovering the evils of religion that I started talking about it. So not that long ago at all, really.
I was in my...
Wow.
Sorry. I'm going to jump in here. And that's kind of like a similar thing for me, in that like when I was very, very young, like I say 6 or 7, that was when I realized that religion didn't really make sense for me. But it wasn't until I went to uni and actually started looking into religion I realized how messed up some of it is. And I started actually reading the Bible for myself, and I started reading bits of the Quran, and I started reading other books, and I realized how like how much damage it can do to people. That was when I realized. And I kind of wish I'd been, like, this is going to sound really patronizing, I'm sorry, I wish I'd been as young as you are, Alex, when I realized kind of how horrific this could be. And I wish I had the confidence that you did at your age to be able to make videos about it. But it wasn't until like 3 months ago that I had the courage to like stand up and say, this is why I don't agree with religion. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So I was an atheist for a long time, but I didn't speak about it until I was like 24.
Yeah, there's an extra step involved from becoming an atheist and becoming what you might call an anti-theist, or at least somebody who is willing to talk about it,
Yeah.
because there's a difference between believing something and being an advocate for it. But the same thing for many religious people. They might believe, but not particularly care for the apologetics. So I think, yeah, there's a bit of a distinction to be made there. And it was similar for me, except over a less, as you identified, less long of a time span.
Yeah.
Just a point.
No, I seriously have like. Oh, sorry, go.
No, I'm British.
Oh, no, you go. I was just gonna say, like, Alex, I have so much respect for you being so confident in kind of your opinion and what you believe. Like, it's kind of a little bit inspiring.
Oh, that's so kind of you to say.
Yeah, like seriously.
I very much appreciate that.
I was watching your videos for like a good few months before I started making any videos, and like you're one of the people who kind of inspired me to kind of step up and say, this is something that I want to talk about.
Well, I must say I'm somewhat lost for words. That's very kind of you to say. I appreciate that. And if I have played even the sort of smallest role in what you say, then I think the compliment has been repaid in the sense that you're now putting out content, and we can all benefit from that. So I mean, that's very kind. I love the communal spirit that we
we all love each other.
Fester, yes.
I have a question for all of you guys, and we can just do kind of a rapid fire on this one. But when it comes to atheist YouTubers, who were your inspirations before you became one yourself?
Who do you want to go first?
Let you go, because I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Okay, sure. Somebody that's not shouted about enough there's a YouTuber called Potholer54. And
yes,
it's just he is wonderful. I just wish he could hear me speaking about how much respect I have for the man. He is absolutely wonderful, and he just creates content where he debunks nonsense, similar to like what a lot of us do, but he does it in such a classy British way. And yeah, I've just got nothing but respect for the guy. He's absolutely wonderful. Then you've got, I mean, I could speak so many that inspire me, but Alex, you mentioned earlier on, non-stamp collector.
Yes.
Guy's phenomenal. I really wish that he was still about, because his content was funny, is funny, and he's just great. Aaron Ra is someone I've always looked up to a lot. Matt Dillahunty is just brilliant. There's two things I disagree with him on, but he is absolutely awesome. And although he's not a YouTuber, Sam Harris, I think he's probably the smartest man alive. Who's next?
I can interject and say you might be happy to know, Steve, that 2 months ago, Non-Stamp Collector made a video with the YouTuber I was going to mention, a guy called 43 Ali, who is 43 Ali is a fantastic YouTuber who doesn't really make content anymore, similar to Non-Stamp Collector. I think he had a video called he's like done the history of hell in the Bible and the history of the devil and all these sort of like very, very well put together videos that I'm just absolutely indebted to. But yeah, he recently put out a video with Non-Stamp Collector, and everybody freaked out because they were just out of nowhere. These people hadn't made videos in so long, and all of a sudden they just came out of nowhere. In fact, Holy Koolaid, I'm just on that video now, and I've just seen Thomas, you left a comment. It's like one of the top rated comments on that video. Yeah, so I'd have to give it to 43 Ali. But I wasn't really inspired so much by YouTubers as I was by other people. Although if I was inspired by YouTubers, it may have been bad YouTubers, because I realized that some people weren't doing that great of a job, and I thought, I have something to say on this, and I think I can do this with a slightly different approach. So without naming any names, I think you catch the gist of what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned 43 Ali, because he was extremely instrumental in my process of leaving the faith. And I remember, as I was, I was still a creationist, but like I was no longer young Earth, and I stopped believing in evolution, or I started believing in evolution, and but I was still afraid of hell. And my most watched video at the very end of it, I actually recommend the video of On Hell by 43 Ali. And so after I published that video, he wrote in the comment section, he's like, why is this video getting so much traffic? It's just getting this massive surge all of a sudden. And then they mentioned mine, and I had been trying to reach out to him, but he didn't have any kind of contact information or Twitter account. And so I just through the YouTube comment section, which, it's hard to read all your comments, but I had a little bit of back and forth with him. And then we started emailing each other, and I've been trying to convince him to get back in the game, but he has, people have lives and stuff, and it's hard to stay in it long term if it's not your full-time thing. So
yeah, I understand that, and also because his videos were so well put together and so in depth, I understand why it would be difficult for him to get back into it. Although with the content he's already put out, I think that's almost like enough. I'd get by fine if he didn't come back, so he got so much. But if he ever did, I'd be over the moon about it. Absolutely.
He's benefited a lot of us for sure.
This is Ali 44. Is
43 Ali.
Somehow I have completely missed this individual. So
I think it's because he hasn't been making videos in a very long time. 43 Ali. Seriously, you're probably going to end up on a binge watch, because it's just a fantastic channel.
I think opened his profile so I can have a watch later.
That's the one. Realizing hell does not exist. That video is just absolutely fantastic. In fact, after I made a video, called something like "Why, as an atheist, I'm still afraid of hell," or something like that. Basically, discussing this idea.
I wanted to ask you if that was still the case, because that was a while ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what I said in the video. I think it was relatively mild, and it still is. It's just, you do from time to time. For me, it's very, very mild. I'll just sort of think about it, and you get these moments of like, what if I am wrong? What if it is all real and I am going to hell? And that can only be attributed to this sort of religious upbringing. It does sort of zap at you, but not nearly enough to cause me any discomfort or trauma anymore, really. But there are people out there who have it a lot worse than I do. But I mean, the basic premise is this idea that it's not just a case of like you're teaching people things that if they disagree with them in later life, they can just drop them, they can just get rid of them. It's not as simple as that, because psychological effects do carry onto the rest of their life. There's sort of nothing you can do about that. And it was actually in making that video that a bunch of people in the comments were like, dude, if you're having these problems, you should go and check out 43 Ali's video, realizing that hell does not exist. And I think I hadn't seen that video, although I'd heard of the channel, and it was just absolutely was perfect thing for it. And so if I ever do sort of feel like that, which doesn't really happen that much, that's sort of a go-to video. And if anybody else who's watching happens to have these sort of thoughts, or knows somebody who does, or wants to sort of explore the idea of, where did hell come from? Does it actually have any biblical backing? That video by 43 Ali in particular is just absolutely seminal.
Yeah. Well, hell is such a powerful tool. It pulls all of us in and makes us feel like, but you can use it with anything. I could say, oh, hey, there was, a volcanic explosion, someone, put a bunch of nukes in a volcano, and now there's all these thetans walking around. And if you don't believe in this, you're going to go to hell. Or, you could apply it to anything. And it's a fear tactic. It's manipulation at its best.
As somebody that's never believed in hell, I'm almost alien to the conversation, to the idea that, for example, Alex, you say that you still get scared. Correct me if I'm saying it wrong. You still have some kind of psychological attachment to this concept. It's very hard, actually, for me to be reciprocal because I don't understand it. But then again, I guess I could if I start reflecting on things that I used to believe in, such as ghosts and the supernatural in other ways, and reflect on the fact that, yeah, I would be scared if it was real, but I never get the fears that... it's hard for me to understand the position you have with it.
It's kind of...
exactly the same.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like almost like what Rachel was saying earlier about the difference between thinking emotionally and thinking rationally. There are certain times where it only happens absent-mindedly. It's not like I'll think a lot about something and then all of a sudden I'll start thinking maybe it's a possibility that hell exists. I can't really explain it. It's like a subconscious thing. Because it's so mild with me, I think a better explanation would be the friend I mentioned earlier, actually, Lloyd Evans. I went to a talk by a bunch of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, which is one of the worst cults in existence, by the way, which I wasn't aware of until I'd been to this talk. And they were speaking about certain things that they were being that they weren't allowed to do when they were growing up. So some specifics included things like they weren't allowed to watch Ghostbusters, or they weren't allowed to have certain toys or whatever, because it was seen as evil. Harry Potter, you know, all these sort of horrendous ideas. And I remember asking the question, well, look, a lot of them still haven't, like they've never watched Ghostbusters just because they weren't allowed to as a kid, and then they just sort of didn't do it. It was always just sort of off the table. And I thought, well, look, what would happen if you watched it now? Would there be any part of you which would sort of have some kind of natural response to that, almost like a reflex? And we thought that one of the things is like guilt. I think that the emotion of guilt is often inexplicable. Like you can't exactly say why you feel guilty for something. If you do something wrong, if you accidentally hurt somebody or something, you feel guilty. You can't really put your finger on why. I mean, why should you care? Why you just do. You just do care about what other people think. And I think if you've had this stuff instilled into you, that say watching a certain film is a bad thing to do and you can't do it, if you watch that film, you might get that sense of guilt. But it's exactly the same. You can't put your finger on it. You can rationalize and think this is probably because of my religious upbringing, but you can't make that emotional jump. It's just there. You just have this feeling of guilt that's been instilled into you that won't go away. It's just your mind has connected guiltiness with doing certain activities, and so you kind of you get this kind of thing. And then for some people it gets a bit worse, and they might think, well, that guilt, again, is connected psychologically in their head with the idea of hell, and it all sort of comes rushing in a little bit. But for me, it's never enough to really make me uncomfortable. But there are certain things in many people's lives, if they used to be religious, especially in steadfast religious family situations, where they will just have this sense of guilt that they can't shake.
Yeah.
Just like, sorry, do you mind if I? Yeah, just mentioned Jehovah's Witnesses there. You had me thinking back to when I was at school, and I had a couple of friends who were Jehovah's Witnesses, and I didn't really realize how different they were from the rest of us who were just atheists as we were, until we got to, like, you know, between sort of 16 and 18, and we started having to hide things from their parents. And it would be like, okay, well, we'll say they're at so-and-so's house instead of at this party or at this club or whatever. And then there was this one girl who I was really good friends with her, absolutely lovely girl, the sweetest girl you'll ever meet. It came to applying for uni, and her parents wanted her to stay at home, go to Sheffield Uni, which was like the one that was commutable because I grew up in South Yorkshire. And they were like, you know, no other way. And she was like, well, you know what? Actually, I want to apply to a different course at a different uni in a different place. I want to live on my own. And her parents turned around to her and they said, you do that, and you're not part of this family anymore. And they were literally saying, like, either we kick you out of the family and never speak to you again, or you do the course that we want you to do at the university we want you to go to, and you live with us. And
yes,
she didn't want to lose her family, so she did that. And at 21, I think, she ended up married to a 30-something-year-old guy who, I don't want to sound horrible, but he looked a bit weird. He looked a bit creepy. And she ended up married to him, and she's still with him now, and she's getting to the point where she wants to pop out babies. And she's the same age as me, she's 24. So she has a degree that she kind of wanted from a university that she didn't want to go to, and she's married to a man that she probably only half wanted to marry. And it's all because her parents kind of wanted to control her, because that was apparently what their faith said to do. And that just makes me really sad.
The Jehovah's Witness cult is almost very, very particularly controlling in many areas of life, including things like that. They are very dismissive of further education. They do not encourage people going to university or even higher or further education if they can avoid it. And there is an official practice within the faith of disfellowship, which is effectively like you are officially ceremoniously kicked out of the religion. And if that
that's what her
happens,
parents were threatening.
yes, if that happens, you are expected to sever all communications. You are not allowed to talk to these people, not one bit. You cannot do it. And if you do it, you run the risk of being alienated from the community yourself. These people are no longer their children. These people, if they turn around and say they don't believe, or if they decide that they want to watch Harry Potter and enjoy it, or they decide they do want to go to university, or they do want to give a blood transfusion, or whatever it may be, they are no longer part of the family. They are no longer their children. They're no longer welcome in the church. And it's not just like the kind of emotional, like, we have to let you go, we feel awful, we don't like the situation. These people are so indoctrinated that they say, good riddance. Get rid of this evil person out of our lives and we'll never speak to them again. It's absolutely awful. And all of the people who were at this conference that I went to who were speaking out were doing so with such bravery, because these are people who had this happen to them. They've been kicked out by their families. And there was one person there who hadn't really spoken about this publicly before. And she realized that, look, the moment that I do this, the moment that I start actually publicizing this, that's it for me. There's absolutely no opportunity for me to go back, because I've publicized my views and they will not accept me. So in sort of coming out and saying, look, I think that this religion is a bad thing. It's a bad influence. It's evil, and I'm going to criticize it. By doing that, she was effectively severing the final ties that she had to her family. It's incredible. You don't really get this kind of stuff anywhere else than maybe like Scientology or something, some of these crazy kind of cults that you only sort of hear myths about. But Jehovah's Witnesses just seem so benign. They seem so common, like almost like a joke that people bring up, a commonality. But it's such a dangerous cult.
No, that's the thing. Like, when we were at sixth form, it was kind of a joke. It was like, oh, they're Jehovah's Witnesses. They can't do such and such. We have to, hide from their parents that they're drinking with us, or blah, blah, blah. And it was a joke. It was a silly thing. But that's when you're 16. As soon as she hit 18, it was a genuinely dangerous thing. Because it was like, either she did exactly what her parents wanted, or she'd never speak to her family again. And suddenly it was like, crap, she has to get serious. And I think that was probably the turning point for me, when I realized that a number of my friends were going through that I started to actually look into a lot of religions and see what was kind of going on below the surface. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, it scared me.
Just looked at the time, and I'm really sorry, but I do have to head very soon. But I just wanted to, again, congratulate you, Holy Koolaid, Thomas, on 30,000 subscribers. You absolutely deserve it. And here's to 50.
Cheers to that.
Go for it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
guys.
I you have to run. Well done. You really deserve it.
I really appreciate that. And thank you guys too for joining me. I've added all of your YouTube channels to the description of the video.
Thank you.
So if everyone, or if anyone is interested in checking out, I highly recommend all three of my guests today: Alex, Rachel, and Steve, or Alex J. O'Connor of Cosmic Skeptic, Rachel Oates of Rachel Oates, and Steve of Rationality Rules. And you can find all their channels in the description.
I feel like I'm the boring one without a cool name.
Nah, not at all. I had one more question, kind of follow up from Greg. I said that if he had any question, I just want to answer this. Yes, about whether or not we've actually used street epistemology with family or friends, basically asking questions rather than creating argument, and how effective it was. So I guess I'll answer that first. And the first time that I had a conversation with my parents about it, it was very confrontational, and it's like arguments are like, Newton's laws still apply to them. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you come at it confrontational, you're going to get people who feel like they're being personally attacked, like their walls went right up. They started accusing me of stuff and getting angry and ticked off. But then the next time that I had this conversation with my dad, we spent about 2 days, and we were just kind of making it more about a teamwork thing, where we were working together to try to find the truth and ask questions and explain why we believe certain things. And it was definitely a more productive conversation. I'm curious what you guys' experiences have been. We'll start with Alex.
Yeah, I generally don't talk about this stuff within the family very much, because my brother is he gets very existential, shall we say. It's very difficult to sort of, he's the type of person to start talking about, but how do you really know anything? What is truth? What is it? You know, like the universe wouldn't exist if the human mind isn't, and I just don't have time for that. There's nothing I can really do. We're both as stubborn as each other in that aspect. We sort of play off each other's arrogance in a sense. Outside of my family, though, if I'm talking to people in generally, I almost always employ the sort of the method of Socrates, of asking questions and sort of getting people to come to their own conclusions rather than forcing my own upon them, but actually doing that covertly and pushing them into a certain direction, but sort of making it seem like they're doing it themselves. So at any point they can turn around and say, I don't agree with this, or I think this is wrong. Because if you're going in with the intention, certainly, of just being aggressive and having an argument, you're not going to get anywhere. It might be fun and you have every right to do it, but if your aim is to change people's minds, then you have to kind of do this approach of asking questions and being civil about it and biting your tongue every now and again when you know that you could say an absolute demolition of their worldview, but that's just going to put them off. So you just have to hold it, which is difficult, but I get by.
I'm working on a video. I just wrote a script called "The Merits of Being a Soft-Spoken Firebrand."
Right.
But I'm curious, Steve. I know you're about to run, but what's your experience been like?
So I'm not entirely acquainted with street apologetics, but I can say that there's a video by Potholer54 called "How to Argue with Assholes," and if you watch it, despite the name being hilarious, he really does break down how you can convince people, and it basically, you need to get them to reflect on their own things, on their own assertions, how exactly they've achieved the positions that they have, because that way they will realize the flaws in their argument when you ask the questions that they haven't. But it has to be done in a way where there's no smugness on you, there's no aggression, there's just genuine nice asking questions. I can't do that, so I don't use his technique, but I would just recommend that. I don't know how close that is related to street epistemology, to be honest with you, but I think if the two are slightly correlated, then I think it's an effective way. But I will just say this: I think there's room for many different voices in a community such as atheism. There's room for people that are firebrand and that will just tell you how it is and call you an idiot. I know most people don't like it. I know most people like the friendly atheist, like the friendly approach. But there is definitely room for people which will just say how it is, because some people will resonate to that better, believe it or not, than the people that are nice. I'm one of them. Not to get into into any other area, but just to give you an example, it was somebody who was aggressive with me that turned me to a vegetarian, because it wasn't the soft people that got me there. It was an aggressive argument that called me an asshole and put it how it was. So I'm not meaning to preach or anything. I'm not at all. I'm just saying that there is definitely room for that as well. So I think there's just different answers, really.
Yeah, there's definitely, and even for people who have a certain approach that appeals to them, they might have different points in their life when those different approaches work better. But Rachel, what about you? What's your experience been like?
It's tough because, like, I have read that book and I do kind of know the techniques, but I've not kind of practiced them on anyone that I know personally, just because I'm kind of very much a kind of live and let live kind of person. So, like, out of the people who are close to me, my brother and sister-in-law, they're very strong Christians. One of my best friends is a Muslim whose parents have just arranged an arranged marriage for him and things like that. And I don't think I'd ever go up to them and try and start a debate on religion, because I don't really feel the need to, because it's very much a kind of like, you believe your thing, I believe my thing, let's just bond over everything else kind of thing. But when it comes to creating YouTube videos about talking to people who I'm not that close with and talking to people who I do disagree with on those fundamental levels, I do kind of follow those techniques and I try and go in and be friendly and be logical, because while I agree that some people do respond to the harsher kind of this is how it is and things, that's just not really my style. My style is to kind of say, well, I believe this, here's my reasoning for it, what do you think? And that's kind of the technique that I go with. just because it kind of suits my personality more than I think it works better than any other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Everybody has their style.
yeah, exactly.
And
Awesome.
if everybody's doing it the same, then it would have no effect. You need that sort of variety, I think. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like there are times when I do get very like emotional. I can be like, I can't believe you just did that. But that tends to be when I'm like personally affected by something. Like if someone's hurt one of my friends, I'll be like, I can't believe you did this to them. But while I'm doing that, I know it's probably not doing anything to help.
Sure.
But it's still the kind of emotional response. So when I do have the time to kind of sit back and think about a response to something, I will just naturally be more logical, be more reasoned, and be like, well, hang on a minute, I can see your point here, but how about? So, yeah, I can see lots of different responses working with lots of different people.
Awesome.
Depends who you are, who they are, you know.
Well, on that note, unless there was anything in particular you guys really wanted to cover, then
Never have I ever prayed.
Really?
No, I had to at school. But I thought I'd get you three to drink.
Seems like a fitting closing, yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Finish your drinks.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations again to you, Thomas.
Thank you, guys.
It's
Fantastic.
really brilliant and really well deserved.
Should I just
So
keep this in the background of all my
Of
upcoming
course.
videos?
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Tattooed on your
Channel
face.
to be people complaining about it.
Just like stick it somewhere.
Yeah, make it covert, yeah.
It blends in with the wall. Well, thank you so much to everyone who joined us, everyone who participated in the live chat. You guys are awesome and amazing. Massive shout out to all of my patrons and all my guests who joined me today. Go check out their channels, hit that subscribe button, show them some love, pledge on Patreon, support them. Fantastic people. They're doing great work. And thank you guys all for joining me.
Sorry, Travis, who just joined in time for it to end. He just commented. Hey, you can always rewatch. You can always rewatch. No worries.
He still gets a shout out from Cosmic Skeptic. So
Yeah.
Well, fair enough.
And also, thank you to everyone that watches it afterwards, because they don't get enough love.
That is true.
On
They're
that note,
awesome people.
thank you to everyone, and remember that if you're stuck in religion, you can be free of it. It can be a hard road, but just dare to be curious, think outside the box, think critically, and don't drink the Kool-Aid.